So if the fire alarm does go off, can you go straight out this door, out the building and gather in the car park at the designated places, please? Well, welcome everyone. Do we need to do any introductions? Because I don't know, does everyone know everyone else? Or do we need to do any introductions?
Am I the new face in the room?
Well, introduce us.
I'm Nicola Percival. I'm the current acting head of Waste Services.
Rubbish job, isn't it?
Back in your block, Robert.
So I'm Gemma Dundee, Chief Operating Officer, responsible for waste and transport.
Dr. David.
I'm Dr. Dave Lane, I'm Head of Transport and Parking.
Fiona.
Hi, I'm Fiona Horton. I'm the Service Manager for Transport Planning.
And we've got Philip at the end there.
Philip.
Councillor Price.
Philip Price.
Councillor
Having a
Philip
member
Price.
for infrastructure and transport.
Okay.
Philip will be suffice.
Well, I'm quite happy to say Councillor Price. Are we starting the video recording yet? Yeah, okay, so then we'll go back to formalities then. We might as well go straight onto the agenda then, since we're not live streaming. Item 1, have we got any apologies today?
No.
So we've got no substitutes. Members, do you have any declarations of interest for the 2 items on the agenda today? No. So we just go on to item 4 then, which are the minutes of our December meeting. Are members comfortable with me signing those minutes as a true reflection of our discussion? If so, can you indicate now? Thank you. Simon, when do you want me to sign the minutes?
After the meeting.
After the meeting, okay, I'll do that after the meeting. Item 5. Sorry,
For the meeting.
bad enough hearing me without that. Item 5, have we got any questions from members of the public?
No questions from them.
Item 6, have we got any questions from councillors? We've got 2 topics to discuss today, and at the request of officers, since we are waiting for Councillor Swinglehurst, who would like to be here for the waste, we're going to swap the 2 topics around, but I'm going to be quite ruthless in time because the 2 topics are going to take up most of our meeting, and I don't know how much time we'll have left for the work programme. So we're going to start with the local cycling, walking and wheeling infrastructure plan. Can I thank officers for their report and appendices and the updated copy of the infrastructure plan? I really do want us to see this debate as a collaborative one. We are all anxious as a council to get the plan into a fit state so that we can achieve Active Travel England Level 2 authority status. I think that's really important. So I do hope that Councillor Price and officers will see our comments as positive and trying to improve the plan and not trying to undermine it, because I think that's important. Well, we're starting, so shall we continue with LC work? Yeah, we've started now. So that when we have the debate, it is seen as trying to come to a conclusion around the table towards a plan that we can all actually agree. I'm going to give 105 minutes for this, members, but that includes agreeing any recommendations as well. And since we have swapped the items around, I will then have a comfort break at the end of that 105 minutes before we then go on to waste. Nicola, if you've got other things to do and you wanted to come back, then that's up to you.
I can work here.
You can work here, are you sure? Because I know everyone's busy and I don't want to take up your time if you have other things to do.
Maybe. And Alyssa, maybe.
Councillor Swinglehurst, welcome.
Yeah, apologies. Apologies, that's the start. Thank you for rearranging that. Appreciate that.
Well, I was lucky to get here as well because my car didn't start. So yes, this is the trouble. We're not living in Hereford and not having enough public transport options, which we will discuss it on Friday.
There's only the margin for life to get in the way, isn't there?
We'll be discussing it on Friday, public transport options. Right, so we've established the fact that we're going to actually have a collaborative and positive debate, and I'll start the debate going. The one issue I've got is that residents out there will not understand what is covered by wheeling, and it's not clear in the plan exactly what that means. For example, the first thing that strikes me, what about mothers push or even fathers pushing pushchairs or buggies? Does it include all forms of wheelchair? Does it include electronic wheelchairs? Does it include mobility scooters? What about the dreaded e-scooters, which I understand the government is thinking of making legal as well? I really do think that we do need to consider what that covers and actually include it in the plan. Does anyone on your side want to kick off? Have you been thinking about that, or do you have? a
Yes,
definition of it?
traditionally they are called LC WIP, so local walking, cycling infrastructure plans. Wheeling is a bit more of a modern addition to it,
Right.
to acknowledge the change in mobility with e-scooters. So it's the more it's the more recent change to the name. So we can definitely add in more detail on what wheeling counts for. I suppose in Herefordshire, we would be looking at it to be all types of wheels, so whether that's disabilities, whether that's pushchairs, whether that's people on e-scooters, not that we're an e-scooter area. So we can add something in a bit more detail about what that actually means.
Councillor Highfield?
Thank you for that. And I just want to remind you that under the law, we are legally obliged to consider disabled people when we make any policy whatsoever in this county. And if we can't, for example, for some reason, we have to explain why. And so things like wheelchairs and stuff, they literally, we have to explain if we can't make it accessible for them, why not? And that we've included it in the plan.
Yeah, so we've done an environmental impact assessment on the LC WIP, and we will, any scheme that comes out of it will have an individual environmental impact assessment done on it, and that will ensure it doesn't discriminate against any
Equalities.
thank you, yeah, that's the one.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah, that's right.
We've
So-
done an environmental
Yeah,
one as
I'm
well.
getting confused. There's so many acronyms. So yes, we are required under the guidance and the regulations around transport that we have to do those anyway. But we can strengthen the LC WIP to cover more detail on that.
It's a more fundamental point than that, because when you're looking at the priorities, and we'll come back to that later on, particularly the factors that you're using in terms of the methodology, accessibility and cohesion is quite key. When we scrutinised those previously in this committee, one of the issues was around accessibility, around styles, around replacing with gates, around the ability for disabled people to get access to them. It's not clear in the plan whether those priorities have taken account of that wider definition of wheeling. For example, the walking and wheeling part of the plan is combined. So the first question you might ask if you start looking at the projects, will that project satisfy somebody who wants to wheel as well as somebody who wants to walk? And that's something I think you'll need to make clear as well, because that's the first question we'll be asking is, does the spec satisfy that sort of, not just the legislative requirements, but just the physical requirements of people being able to access them?
Yeah, it will depend on where the funding for the project comes from, whether or not we have to, or we are required to support walking, cycling and wheeling. If it is something that comes from Active Travel England, we get a grant of them every year. We are required to support all modes of active transport, so walking, cycling and wheeling. If it was, say, base budget, so the council funded something, it is strongly recommended that we ensure that all modes of transport are covered, but it's not a requirement. So it wouldn't stop us doing it, but it would be a recommendation that we do, which is why the LC WIP is here to encourage that.
But Councillor Highfield point about the legislative requirements, would you not be open to challenge?
Not necessarily. It depends on what the infrastructure is. So as long as we don't disadvantage them, and we provide an alternative, that would be a suitable reason why, say we didn't have say we did a shared cycle and walk-in path. It's not ideal, but if that's the physical constraints of the road that's available to us, we would do in our impact assessment a statement as to why that's been the way it is, how there's no other alternative to do it. So we're going for progress, not perfection. However, we would look at mitigations where possible. So sometimes we have to say narrow some of the routes and widen them depending on the infrastructure that's available to us without, I don't know, making a road one way up, for example. That would be, so the guidance allows us to do the best we can, which isn't always perfect.
Yeah, we have to explain ourselves, that's all. If it's reasonable, it's not reasonable to provide access for disabled people, for example, then we say we've noted it, but we can't do it in this location. As long as we've explained ourselves, then we're covered.
But this expectation that will arise from Whelan being in the plan needs to be addressed somewhere in the plan.
Yeah.
So that would be part of the prioritisation as well. So within our prioritisation criteria, that will identify, it will prioritise projects that support all modes of transport. So they would be higher scoring. So they would more likely get more funding because if it only supports walking and not wheeling, or wheeling and not walking, and cycling, only cycling, it would not be as it would not go up the prioritisation list as high, because only those that kind of do everything would get a priority.
Is that clear in the plan, you think? Because I didn't get that from the plan. I don't know what members think.
It can be updated. I'm more than happy to add additional wording in to make it a bit more clear.
Do we want a recommendation, members, along those lines?
Yes, I think the word wheeling, I think, has confused a great many people. I've been asked a lot of times. It's just not clear.
Yeah.
It means wheels, but what? So people will automatically assume maybe they can go on disabled.
Yeah.
And so I think
Sorry.
we need to sort of put an extra word in there,
Yeah.
or do away with the word wheeling and put in something that's more appropriate.
And this,
It may be modern, but this is Herefordshire.
and this requirement for to meet ATE requirements, you're saying it's going to get greater priority if it meets both walking and cycling, or possibly wheeling,
Yeah.
right? That could end up putting a bias into the system, that we're neglecting great opportunities for an improved footpath, for example, just because it doesn't meet both requirements, and we don't think it's going to get. Is that a possibility? Is that a risk?
So I think we're looking at about 8 different criteria for the prioritisation. So once it's been adopted by Cabinet, we'll work through the list of schemes, which is about 200 we presented to the public, and we'll come up with a top 10 for the city, and then a top 10 for the county outside the city. Because I think one thing we did note, that if we did the same prioritisation for urban and rural, well, rural would get absolutely nothing, because how it works. So once that's done, we can present that to scrutiny, and we can discuss how we've prioritised them. I would hope that, because there's so many criteria, the balance that would come out would be appropriate for all. But we will see. I suppose I can't guarantee one way or another, because we've not done the prioritisation exercise yet.
Actually, that's been answered a little bit. I was thinking about how your prioritisations are weighted so that certain things aren't compromised.
Yeah.
And I guess there's a danger that if the highest priority is that it supports all sorts of transport, then things like safety might be compromised.
Safety, so safety is always, in my mind, the most important, and so the criteria for the LTM 120, which is the guidance from National Highways about how we design infrastructure for active travel, and there's 5 priorities in that, and safety is one of them. So it would have equal measure, but we wouldn't design something or build something that wasn't safe. Yeah. That's kind of the hard and fast rule. We would not be doing anything that doesn't come across as improving safety, or removing any critical risk that we've identified.
Well, we will come on to prioritisation. That was of interest to the committee. But just staying with this wheeling point, because I don't want to lose it. The recommendation would be around not just the definition, Daniel, but it'd be around that point about how it fits into the prioritisation of the projects to be chosen. Because we need to manage those expectations. Because if you're bringing a project along and the spec is only for pedestrians, and I'm quite happy with that. I mean, I'm a pedestrian, so it suits me. Yeah. You may then get someone coming along, like some of my disabled residents, saying, well, hold on, you've fallen short there, you haven't thought of us. And that could then end up as a political hot potato. So I think a definition around that.
And that's in favour of public rights of way. because they're mostly footpaths that are not practical for wheeled vehicles of any sort.
No.
And so it's likely they would receive a very low priority, and yet we got way over 2,000 miles of that, which should be part of our local cycling and walking, particularly walking network, and some of it needs improvement.
We are going to touch upon that, how it integrates with the plan. Councillor Owen?
Thank you, Louis. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, I guess, I hope that we also have an ambition to include everybody in access to active travel. And I think that's why the term wheeling is being included more now. Like Sustrans has just changed to being the walking, wheeling and cycling charity, which I think is an acknowledgement of that sort of more inclusive approach. I'm just a little bit concerned from what we're saying that might be overlooked or lost.
Well, the definition, well, the recommendation will be along, we need to have a definition of wheeling in the plan. That makes it clear what is covered by it. And we need to have that definition then looked at in terms of the priorities set out in the plan for the various projects that have been chosen. And if wheeling doesn't then isn't able to be incorporated within a particular project, then I think that needs to be explained.
It certainly needs to be explained.
If we can't do everyone, councillors, then we need to explain it. We need to make it quite clear that what exactly we're going to be providing in terms of a footpath or a traffic-free route or whatever. Yes, I mean, that's one of the key issues.
Yeah, I guess I think I'm just saying it should be an ambition to include that, rather than go, oh no, sorry, can't deliver that. You see what I mean? It's like,
It has to be included legally, and when
yeah, but I think we should go a little beyond just trying to discharge our legal obligations, as I'm saying, in terms of sort of access and to active travel.
Can I say, I just feel it's really important to maintain what we already have. We say a large number of public rights of way. Not wanting to be too personal, but I've got a ward in the heart of the city with public rights of way that are in an appalling, not in a good way. Bit of tinkering, a little bit of here and there, as opposed to addressing it. I did it myself with another councillor, and someone else cleared one long piece of public right of way. And I think sort of finding new ideas, I would say first and foremost, maintain what we've already got. Hereford is a fabulous place, a wonderful county, and that's not being done, I feel.
We have scrutinised prowls before, Councillor Fox. This is about the LC whip itself, but I mean,
there are some public rights of way where there's absolutely, because of the gradient, there is absolutely no chance of, say, a wheelchair going up nor down. I wouldn't like to push any buggy or pram up or down. Yet it's a very well used, some public rights of way are very well used. That's also a great fitness opportunity.
okay, before we bring anyone in, Simon, can we record that as a concern of Councillor Foxton? Because we're not focusing on prowls per se today, although we have looked at it in the past. But that point about access and overgrowth, that's something we have raised in the past. And I don't see any reason why we shouldn't have an action point, Daniel, perhaps, to go back to the proud team.
Okay.
To actually raise that again with them, since Councillor Foxton has raised it.
Because I'm hearing children going to school and complaints happening with muddy shoes having gone along. I had a fitness group, including myself, going up this rather good public right of way. It's pretty shocking now and a bit hairy to do so.
Okay.
So we wisely avoid it.
So we take an action point and take that back to the team. I'm going to bring Fiona in first, then I'll bring you in, councillor Pemberley, because you've been waiting.
Yes, I just wanted to kind of touch on the public rights of way. So the LC Whip works alongside the policy for public rights of way. The LC Whip is more focused on the public highway rather than the PROW network, but there is a link and they do work together, and we do and we will be working more closely with Lee Whitehouse's team to make sure there's alignment there. But while I just didn't want to get too bogged down in PROWs, because it's not implicitly what the LC Whip is about. It's about improving the public highway infrastructure, not the PROW infrastructure. We do have a separate policy for that, and we can work together. So just to make a clarity that
Yes,
this policy is not responsible for PROWs. It's a separate piece of work.
yeah. But we're taking an action point though.
If
Councillor Pemberley first.
sorry, so I just wanted to clarify, if you're talking highway, all public rights of way are highways. So you want to be clarity, you've got to be careful with your terminology.
Well, we are talking about the LC Whip today.
Yes, so on the LC Whip, I'm really pleased to see that work being done between the PROW network and the LC Whip, and how important it is to use those routes as active travel routes. And just to encourage you to work also with the Local Access Forum, and through the Local Access Forum, we are developing a volunteer group with public footpath officers who really have such brilliant local knowledge, and will be able to feed into which routes are absolutely crucial for getting children from one place to another. There are some real improvements happening with the way PROW is managed. Councillor Highfield is also a member of the Local Access Forum, and so I feel really, really positive about that, and would love to see that collaboration develop.
Yeah. I was going to say, so there's been recent guidance written by Active Travel England that focuses on the rural areas, because the current guidance they have is very urban centric. It's not in published format yet, but we have responded as a council to the draft. In that they do discuss the distinction between PROWs and what the LC Whip covers. And one of the things they do look at recommending is that where there is a PROW that actually would be a very good suitable alternative for an active travel route, we look at improving it with hard surface, lighting, etc. We can't do it obviously with all of the network, but it would be great to work with the Local Access Forum and the communities and the parish and town councils and members to identify if there are any of those routes that we could quickly upgrade and have them so kids don't go to school with muddy shoes, and so that is an option available to us.
Can I
Come in,
Can
councillor.
I say one alarming thing that I've highlighted here? This is quick wins, such as removing barriers, chicanes, pinch points. I have footpaths with a sign at one end, no cycling, but they cycle through, right next to a retirement village, which is a lovely phrase, well over 100 residents in flats, lovely place near the Rose Garden. And the other end, there's no sign. Mm-hmm. Yes, there is a bit of a barrier, thank heavens, because we've got elderly people with all manner of mobility aids walking around there, and cyclists, all ages. Yeah, it's not just children, it's not young people, it's core older cyclists, and they just feel they have a right of way. Also, 7 years waiting for another pathway, and it's definitely a footpath. We've got a sign one end and no sign the other end. I mean, beggars belief, really.
I would certainly take up your points with the PROW team direct, Councillor Foxton, but let's park the safety one, because that's what we're going to be discussing later on when it comes to weighting of the factors that should apply to the prioritisation. But if you have any issues within your ward that you think need to be fixed, then I would go straight to the PROW team and bring it to their attention seriously.
Which I have done.
Which you have done.
but I will,
Well, you could say
I'll
that,
pursue it, I'll pursue it.
you could say following
Vigor.
following the scrutiny committee today, you have the
Yes,
chair's support
exactly.
to pursue it again.
Thank
You could use my name in vain.
If you want to copy me in as well, then we can
Okay.
get it moving for you.
That's super, thank you so much.
And right to Dunhope.
Yeah, staying with us, members,
He hedged it
Yeah.
off.
staying with us, members. Do you want a recommendation, councillor Pebbledy, on more collaboration with the local access forum on this?
I mean,
Or do you think
Fionn-
there's enough's been done?
Yeah, I mean, Fion's certainly been involved in the local access forum and is aware of the changes that we're trying to make. So, yes, I mean, if you think that's
It's
useful.
an easy recommendation because it's definitely something that we would be doing. We have got approval
Okay.
for a new officer as well, so that they can, part of their role will be also to strengthen the community links that we currently only have tentative links, but it'd be a great recommendation for us to work towards because definitely.
But if you're doing it, it's superfluous, isn't it?
It is, I think there's a lot of work happening around public rights of way at the moment, and I would encourage this committee to consider looking at this at some point as part of its work programme.
Again.
But I think,
Yeah.
I don't think it needs any recommendations to
Okay,
keep it
I
going.
agree with
The
you.
momentum is very there at the
Yeah,
moment.
because we've got quite a number that we might be actually tabling today.
Indeed.
Right, that's good on the wheeling definition and everything else. What I want to do is start with the opening of the plan. I mean, it's quite clear that this plan is subservient to the local transport plan, which council will be in December. And you do usefully within the plan have a section in the local transport plan that sets out the objectives of it. But it's not clear, because of the way it's structured, how the LC WIP is going to contribute directly to the objectives of the local transport plan. So one of the thoughts that the committee had was that you need to bring that section more up front. That I think is going to be a recommendation from us, because it's strange that if we've got this secondary plan sitting under the local transport plan, that we don't somewhere in that opening section say why this plan supports the objectives that you set out there. Does any of the members want to add to this point? No, because I think that's quite clear from us, isn't it? That then, councillor Price, leads us on to the reference to the bypass, which the committee had some difficulty with. The LC WIP doesn't depend on the bypass itself to actually be brought forward, isn't that right, Fionn?
That's right, yeah.
Right. The bypass, which the council is solidly, well, mainly behind, probably won't get completed much before 2040. The committee feels that the reference to the bypass causes some confusion within the plan as it currently is actually structured. And I don't know what you think, councillor Price, about that. Maybe it was your view that it needed to be said somewhere in that. So I'd be interested to know why you think the bypass needs to be part of this plan then.
I think if you talk about infrastructure for Herefordshire, somewhere fairly near the top of it, bypass would get mentioned.
Right.
If you're looking for funding for infrastructure, the LC WIP, the local transport plan and everything around that package has to be in place to ensure that you are compliant with what the government is asking you for. So if you want to go and get some funding, the first thing they'll look at, do you have a local transport plan up to date or agreed? Do you have LC WIP, which sits underneath of it? All of that stuff. So in that context, why would you not mention the infrastructure for the county? And on that basis, that the current major infrastructure is the bypass. So that's my position on it. Why would you not mention it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the points that maybe the LCWIP hasn't been clear on, and we can add more detail on it, is that the bypass provides a really good opportunity for active travel infrastructure in the city that without the bypass we can't do. So I think also one of the when we go to government for funding for the bypass, one of the priority lists that they'll be asking is, does this improve active travel infrastructure? Because they don't tend to give us money to build roads just for the sake of roads. So one of the important things that the LC Whip is there to do is to show that actually this does provide another form of transport. So while the road is about a road, it would actually free up space on the A49 as it is now for us to put more dedicated walking and cycling infrastructure in. And also it's important that the LC Whip has reference to it, because what we don't want is the bypass to kind of be built and there be no reference to the requirement to add in improved active travel infrastructure. So we're recommending we have almost like a cycle highway going through the city, parallel to any bypass. We would have an active travel bypass to go the active travel route that would go alongside the bypass. So while it wouldn't be on it, it would be right next to it. So I think there's a balance to be had. It's important that it is referenced, because we would miss an opportunity in active travel if we didn't have it in there. And also it's an opportunity for the bypass bid to show that it's more than just a road.
But there's a timing issue here, isn't there? I mean, I'm just looking at it from active travel England's point of view. Yes, I mean, if we can de-trunk the A49, excellent. We can then look at more active travel opportunities from the de-trunking of the A49. But in my sort of thoughts, I don't see a bypass being complete before 2040. What is the timescales for this LC Whip? And that's my problem. It's not that the bypass won't open up these opportunities. It's maybe LC Whip 3 that should be referencing that, rather than LC Whip 1, if you see what I'm getting at.
So we're not going to be rewriting the LC Whip on a regular cycle. So it doesn't have a cyclic, like every 20 years we update it. It's an annual review.
Right.
So it could be every week we update it. So the plan itself will be constantly updated with changes and version edits on it. But the whole point of it is that it's a plan, not a strategy, to allow us to change it frequently. So if suddenly a housing development came up somewhere, the LC Whip is able to adapt immediately to add in plans and priorities to make that work for active travel infrastructure. So it wouldn't, if we did it as a strategy with an end date, we would need to go through a lot more rigorous changes to get anything updated.
Okay, and I'm looking at members here, but my suggestion then is you need to make that clearer that the bypass is the longer term ambition. If you look at it, it looks contemporaneous in the way that it's written at the moment. That's what came up to me. Councillor Pevney first, then Councillor Highfield.
So I wasn't, unfortunately, I wasn't at the key line inquiry meeting. I was on holiday. But I think the concern was about achieving level 2 status.
Yes.
Whether that compromised it, because they would look at it and say, there's a lot of emphasis on this, and that's not necessarily achievable in the short term. So as the LC Whip can be constantly updated, is there an opportunity for us to get feedback from Active Travel England, and for them to say, we're not quite happy about this, and then we can make?
Yes, so we are, Herefordshire Council is a level 1 authority. So Active Travel England have ratings from 0 to, I think, 5, but no one's 5 and no one's a 4. We are level 1. Our funding from Active Travel England is based on us being a level 1 authority. The best example to compare us to is Telford are similar population to us, different, size network. We got 264,000 this year funding. Telford got over 1 million. And the only difference is they're a level 2. So it's a priority for us to get to a level 2. Active Travel England have done their review and they've been really helpful with us. Our next review is going to be in about 18 months. And within that 18 months, my kind of priority is to how do we get to a level 2. We're a very, very strong level 1, according to Active Travel England. They like our LC Whip. They like the fact it's going to be constantly updated. And having the 2 reasons we didn't get a level 2 this time was we didn't have an adopted LC Whip, and we didn't have the inspectors from Active Travel England weren't routinely coming to check on our schemes. Both very quick changes we could do to improve it. So we are very positive that we could be a level 2 next time round. It's going to be much more difficult to get to a level 2 in 18 months because the funding is for 4 years. So they would have to carve out additional funding for us from someone else's LC whip. So we're going to have to be very, very strong in our thing. The criteria we get of them is a spreadsheet. Happy to share it, happy to have a working group with the committee on how we can achieve level 2. And there's probably 20, 30 different categories as to what we need to do to become a level 2. For example, bikeability, what our bikeability training levels are, that's considered, that's checked. How members are trained in active travel. So do we provide training for all members to be aware what active travel is? It's a very wide criteria of what we need to do. So as soon as this is adopted, there will definitely be a lot of work on it. So you might have to come to some training on active travel, which I'm sure you all love. I'll bring cake. So there is, I think that it might be worth Scrutiny supporting that, because there might be changes over multiple departments over how we can ensure we get a level 2 next time round.
Just to reassure Councillor Peverty, we have got a recommendation saying that they do need to check with Active Travel England about whatever plan emerges from our discussions today. But I think I'm quite happy, Councillor Price, as long as we have that qualification that this is the longer term, because it could cause confusion, because I don't want Active Travel England thinking, well, the bypass is about to be built within 2 or 3 years and you're going to have all this de-trunking opportunity. I think we need to be transparent with them. And I wasn't clear from looking at the plan whether that was really quite clear. But that qualification of just saying this is more the longer term ambition, I think
you're very short term thinking if you think 2040 is long term. Long term is at least 50 years out. We have to think long term. The bypass for Hereford has had several multiples of 15 years, which you are saying is long term, to get to the point we're at. So
medium term,
20, I don't think it's even medium term. It is the future, whatever that future is.
It's really relevant in the context of the LC whip. Is if this is a short-term document that's being constantly updated.
Yeah.
Then
I can understand that, but I mean the point is it will be updated on the basis of the local plan, the housing demands, of everything that's coming along. We'll have to update the LC whip, but you can't just constantly refer to a bypass infrastructure projects as being short-term, medium-term, long-term. It is the direction of travel that encompasses all the short-term measures that make it.
Well, let's stay with that point. Councillor
I just wanted to remind everybody, to talk about long-term, phase 1 of the bypass will be completed short-term, and that is already creating opportunities alongside it, which was the justification, if you like, for the Holme Lacey improvements, because there will be an alternative route that people don't have to take Holme Lacey Road eventually. But that phase 1 is we're going to start this year, so that's short term.
Councillor Mason,
can I just come back to the level 1, level 2 thing? And you talked about Telford being the natural comparator. Can you just give me a bit more information on that? And secondly, is there anything, you always talk about the LC whip to a state where that supports us being level 2, and level 2 is essentially a good thing to do, but also engenders more money, as I understand it. But is there anything outside the LC whip of that level 2 qualification that you think is particularly challenging, that is rurality versus urban, or something similar to that?
Yeah, it is obviously much more difficult to have the modal shift in Herefordshire, because we are a very rural county compared to somewhere like Telford that is much more urbanised and kind of it's much more dense population, whereas we're quite spread. One thing the LC whip is trying to focus on is considering each market town as its own centre. So we're only looking at infrastructure within, I think it's 10 kilometres of each market town, so that we're not kind of losing credibility by saying we're going to have an active travel route that goes from Kington to Leominster. We're probably never going to be able to do that. We're definitely not going to have one from Ledbury to Ross, for example. So we're trying to condense them into very manageable chunks. The one thing Telford do very well is their kind of softer side to active travel. So they have a dedicated team of quite a number of officers that do community work. So they do bike groups and walking groups, and they work with vulnerable people and disadvantaged people. They do like bike hire. We do a bike hire scheme, but they do bike giving schemes. So they work with their waste operator to have like a safe haven for unused bikes, and then they work with their local community, and I think it's Men in Sheds charity. They do the bikes up and they give them to vulnerable people. So that is one thing that we can work on over the next couple of years. I think the community forum will be really helpful in doing that. So I think that's why Telford are much more ahead of us in infrastructure anyway, because they have a lot more growth and they build a lot more, so they have a lot more infrastructure put in. But this like softer side, non-engineering side is a lot better than what we currently do. I think we do Nordic walking and Beryl, and really good bikeability, but that's kind of probably a tenth of what somewhere like Telford's do.
And that comes back to my question about the comparator. I was sort of immediately struck when you said Telford's the obvious comparator. I would normally think of, you know, Shropshire as a comparator or something like that. How much are the predominantly rural authorities level 1 versus level 2 at the ATE level and indeed at the LC whip level? Do you know?
So I've come from Shropshire, and my previous job was LC was one of my jobs there. Shropshire are also a level 1 authority. I was assured by AT we were a high level 1, one of the highest. So I was quite proud of that one, because I did say, if you be dirty, not put me up in my new council. But they were very happy with what we're doing. Shropshire, again, they don't have that team built within their service to provide that. So, you know, I think they've just appointed a dedicated officer on active travel, but it's not as hopefully ingrained as it's going to be here. Shropshire's difficulty is they don't have one LC whip, they have 5, 6. They have 6 LC whips. So it's a lot more challenging, I would say, as an officer there to prioritise, because I can prioritise one LC whip and they've got to do it differently. The reason Shropshire isn't a natural comparison to us is the population. So part of the funding is based on how much money we have, how many people we have. So it's population and level. It's not necessarily rurality. Rurality does come into it, but it's not the main basis of where we get money from is what level we are and how many people live in our, which is why Telford's, they're very similar in numbers, which is why I picked Telford out.
Okay. One more question. So there are presumably other authorities elsewhere in the country that are similar sized and have a similar feel.
Yeah.
Do they normally get stuck at level 1? I think is really the essence of my question.
No, some rural authorities are a level 2 authority. So particularly where they have an active travel commissioner in mayoral authorities, it's like Yorkshire, South Yorkshire and North Yorkshire, and those authorities, they are quite high in their level 1, 2s and 3s. So
would you be able to send us a little note
Yeah,
just
that's
giving us some examples of, you know?
yeah, that's not a problem, we can do that. We won't be likely to get in a level 3 or a 4. I think that's kind of the one thing the rurality will stop us on. We won't be able to achieve the required work that those levels want from us. So we're not going to be getting the London levels, which I think we'd all see.
Just before I bring Dr. Landon, Councillor Mason, are you satisfied with what Fionn said, or do you think we need a recommendation to say that we should be looking wider at best practice to make sure that we know exactly what's required for level 2?
No, because I think if I understand this correctly, what we're talking about here is the LC, we're getting the LC whip up to a level that means that that's not compromising our ability to get to level 2 of funding. And I think that seems like a reasonable expectation. What I don't want to do is to misunderstand that we think it's a slam dunk to level 2 if it really isn't. And therefore, I think my question is more a contextual one rather than. So you're making me think out aloud.
Yeah.
And maybe that is a point of scrutiny, is to say, you know, should the LC whip be to a level 2 standard? I think the argument is yes. Is that correct? The argument being put is that it should be. So maybe the question is, how realistic is that? And I would think that something showing us a number of other areas of the country that are comparable who have achieved that would be sufficient to say this is worthwhile.
Is that an action point now?
I think it's an action
point.
Yeah, I think so.
An action point rather than a recommendation. Simon, can you note that down as an action point for the team to come back and let the committee know that? Dr. Land, you've been patient.
All I want to say, Councillor, is one of the reasons that we're heading in the right direction is because Fion's made such good effort engaging with ATE, and I think we hadn't got that before. So one of the great things is we know where we are, that we're a strong one. We didn't know that before, and I think ATE have actually been really supportive, haven't they, Fia, about this is what you need to do next, this is where you need to be. And this buys into Councillor Mason's point that having an LC whip is really fundamental, but it isn't the only game in town to get to a level 2. And it is really hard to get to level 2. I think I've been trying to find the list and it's hidden in a spreadsheet somewhere, and we'll get it to you. But very few rural authorities are level 2. That's not to say there are none. I'm sure there are some, because we have seen the list. We've got it somewhere, haven't we? We'll dig out the details. But it is hard, and the LC whip's fundamentally important. But that's still just a document. You know, we have to show commitments to it. We have to deliver schemes. We have to prove that we can do that stuff. We have to show, you know, everyone has to show some corporate leadership about the intention to do that, and then show that we've delivered it on the ground. So I think the major win here is fee building that relationship with Active Travel England, so we know, so we can come and report back and say, actually, following scrutiny, this is where we are, this is what we know, what we need to do, this is what we're doing to try and achieve it.
And that has to be commended, so well done.
What I can do is I can send you so we have to self-assess ourselves. So we did it in September. So I have the response that I sent that went to ATE. So I can show you that, and it shows which criteria we were level 1 at. Level 2, some of them were level like 3 and 4 because we're quite good in some areas. So I can send you our response that ATE have had, and that they've accepted that that's a good assertion of where we currently are based.
Okay, well, we'll have that as an action point. Going back to the bypass, I'm convinced, given what members have said, that we'll take out that recommendation on the bypass, Daniel. But I'm relying on you, Fiona, and you, Councillor Price, to take the point that as it's written at the moment, I do think it just needs to be tweaked to make it clear where the bypass fits in, how we might be able to take the LC whip forward in terms of the projects. That's all I'm asking for, a bit more sort of clarity there, which could be just a timing thing, saying when the bypass is complete in 5 or 6 years, then we will certainly look to use that to de-trunk the A49 and to look for more potential routes for active travel. It could be as blunt as that, it doesn't have to. So I'll leave that as an action point as well, Simon, just for the team to take forward, and we'll take the recommendation out. But I'm conscious of time because we've got a lot to go through here. I'm going to go on to the prioritisation methodology first before I go on to detail, Daniel, because I think the methodology has been mentioned already. We have 5 factors in the methodology: safety, cohesion, directness, comfort, and that's what I'm trying to think.
Attractiveness.
And attractiveness. Yes, thank you.
That's my sweetest.
The members felt that of those 5, safety and cohesion must be the highest priority. If someone doesn't feel safe cycling down a road or walking down a road or wheeling down a road, they're not going to use it. Bluntly, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how attractive it is, doesn't matter how level it is, doesn't matter about how direct it is. They will not use it. Safety has got to be paramount. Cohesion is the other one, because if you can't travel along an active travel route without having to come to some sort of physical constraint, that's going to impact on those that might be wheeling, might even impact on the less mobile pedestrians as well, to come on and off pavements and everything else, and maybe even have to cross roads that they share with traffic. So when it came to the methodology, the first question I wanted to ask was, is there any flexibility in the DfT's approach here to give greater weight to those 2 factors as against the other 3?
So the 5 criteria are the 5 criteria in the LTM 120. So that's their 5 equally weighted criteria. So no, we can't change that. One thing however, the RLTP does as the kind of parent document is it has a very big focus on safety. So I wouldn't build anything unsafe. We couldn't build anything unsafe. So while I accept what you said, we're trying to, the LCW has to adhere to Active Travel England and DFT's guidance and recommendations, and they've weighted all 5 equally, which
Strange.
yeah, I think there's that I suppose it's that assumption we wouldn't build anything unsafe. So
No.
there's an equal weighted there that it will be safe what we do. I think a lot of what there are some very quick wins with safety, and I think they're trying to kind of move away from the road safety focus to safety for infrastructure for active travel, because there could be very separate things. So we've got 2 policies we have to follow. We have the road safety policy from government, and then we have the LTM 120 guidance, which is how we should design and deliver things.
I'm just really interested in perception of safety as well, which Louis just alluded to. You have to feel safe in order to be able to use something. And I know that's recognised in the local transport plan about perceived safety, but actually all the data we collect is only about killed and seriously injured figures. So none of our policies are kind of improving, are designed to improve safety based on perceived safety. So I just wonder how you work with that.
Yeah, it is very difficult because none of the data that we get really looks at people's perception. We do have a highway questionnaire that it's a company that does it on behalf of DFT. We pay the money to do it, so it's not free. But part of that is they ask residents of Herefordshire their opinion on our infrastructure. So that's something that will be hopefully done over the next couple of months, and that will give us a good understanding of how the residents feel about what we deliver, but it doesn't go into that granular detail. When we do legal consultations, again, they don't go into that granular perceived safety request. It's just something that's missing within the industry, and I think as an authority and as officers, it's something that I'm quite keen on. Particularly as a woman, I wouldn't walk down a route with no light in. So for me, perceived safety, put some light in very quickly, it makes it automatically feel safer. So this is something we need to do, but none of the government guidance at the moment has a big push on it. The new rural guidance does have a lot of reference to perceived safety. So once that is fully adopted, that'll give me a really good kind of approach to perceived safety.
Yeah. I've got a thought, but I want to bring Councillor Mason, and I think you wanted to come in, did you?
I'll come in a bit later, actually. You want to build on?
Yeah,
Councillor Bowden.
we now know that we can't do anything about weighting with the factors. Can we have the narrative then to say that while the factors are all equal in the upfront narrative, this authority will give serious emphasis to safety and to cohesion?
Yeah.
Even I know you can't do anything within the actual methodology scoring for the routes that you are going to choose. At least having that assurance up front would I think help. Yeah. Because no one's going to use a route if they don't feel safe. I'll tell you that now. It doesn't matter how well you design it, how flat it is, how short it is, how attractive it is. You could have planters along it, but if people don't feel safe using it.
Would a good recommendation be I can speak with Active Travel England and see how much we can kind of push the envelope a little bit on that weighting, and whether there's they've got they're happy with the flexibility to do that. I'm happy to have that conversation with them.
So Daniel, that third recommendation would have a piece at the front to say, speak to Active Travel England to see whether we can adapt, and the rest of the recommendation stays the same. Councillor Highfield first, then Councillor Mason, and then Dr. Land.
Yes, as a practical application for safety, most countries that have got more advanced cycling and walking facilities, their priority is to separate the walkers and cyclists from the traffic where possible. So I wonder if it's possible to build into this that where possible we will try to separate walkers or the wheelers and the walkers from the traffic. It's not always possible in a place like this, but where it's possible, we should make that a priority.
That's already covered in LTM 120. So the guidance from them is that walking cyclists and walkers are separated, and that they're separated from the car users, and they provide design guidance on how that should be and minimum widths and things like that. It's so when I mentioned right at the beginning of the meeting about compromising design so that where there's not enough space, we sometimes have to not be perfect. Perfect to the government would be, a 2 metre walking, 3 metre cycling, a buffer, and then cars. So that is already there for us to do. It is much more challenging for us because we're rural and our roads just aren't that wide. But yes, as I think the LC Whip is quite clear that we will adhere to LTM 120 where we can. So that does answer your request there.
Do people who read that know what that LTN means?
Possibly not. I would have a check with the wording to make sure there's something within the document. I think we do go into detail at some part of the document about what is LTN, but I will double check that's in there.
Yeah, just before we go on, that was our 4th recommendation from active travel.
Yeah.
Scrutiny. That was the one I was wanting to touch base on today. Because we had 3 others, I might as well cover them before I bring in Councillor Mason and Dr. Lyon. We should have a single plan on active travel, and that's this one. It should be Hereford-centric, and I agree this isn't Hereford-centric. That's very good as well. The 3rd one was around, of course, delineation, which was very important. I can't remember the 4th, but I think it is covered in the plan. So it is quite important that delineation is actually there. And if you could change the wording, then that would be great.
I'll double check it, but yeah, we can make sure that's clear. But yeah, LTN is exactly that. It is what we want.
Okay, because I didn't know what that specifically contained, so. Yeah.
Well, that's the next what's in it.
Okay.
Councillor Mason?
So I'm glad we've come back to the question of this scoring. These things are necessary evils in my experience. They're always frustrating. You'd skipped over the document that was the name of the government's policy, the 118 or the
LTM 120.
Sorry.
LTM 120.
LTM 120. Thank you. So I can go and not ask you to bore us now, but I will bore myself by reading it because I'm sure it's extremely tedious. Is there any likelihood of that changing?
No. So they would have it's been in place for a while. They would have to withdraw it and reissue a new one.
When we talk about it being equal weighting, does that literally mean that there are 5 sets of columns and at the end they take 20% of each of those and add it up to get you a 1? Or is it that we have to look in those 5, we have to sort of perceive that we're looking at those 5 equally?
It's not quantitative, it's very qualitative, the response, the weighting. So we would look at it from officer recommendation, we'd look at members' comments. So it's not as kind of structured as 20%, 20%, 20%. We would
Which is actually very reassuring because that means that in fact that equal weighting isn't as rigid as it might sound.
No, it's not as rigid as it is now. We can look at expanding it. I'll speak to Active Travel England about what we can do. Yeah, so I think there may be some scope. I'll see what other councils have done as well. But yeah, we can.
And then related to this as well, the perceived safety thing is sort of similar to the question of nothing's happened yet. Now, I think I'm not alone as a councillor in the frustration where people say it's an accident waiting to happen. The response is, but the accident hasn't happened, therefore it's not a safety issue, which of course leads us to that horrible place where we say we'll have to wait until something does happen for something to change. How much flexibility is there within this framework for us to acknowledge potential risk, particularly given that thankfully these risks are very the event happening by these risks is very rare. So you could say you've got 2 places where there's absolutely 0 risk and nothing's happened. There's actually material risk, nothing's happened yet. How do we differentiate between those 2?
So that would come down to kind of the qualitative. We discuss, we take officer member recommendation, officer recommendation, and public requests come into it. One good thing about the LC Whip is because of just the way it's been structured, it doesn't require an outside incident to build the infrastructure. So if there isn't an accident, that's not a bad thing. It's a good thing there's no accidents, but it's for the waiting, it doesn't actually matter. So I had a really good analogy of if you waited to build a bridge by seeing how many people swam the river, you'd never build a bridge. So that's very much applicable here. Or it's very applicable here in that it doesn't require an incident for us to prioritise it. The other factors come into it, and none of the factors are previous incidents. There is things that, safety, but that could be perceived safety of we think this may be a safety issue rather than here's a KSI state that this has happened.
Thank you very much. It's really helpful.
Okay, Dr. Land.
I was just going to add, Councillor Stark, that the LTM 120, so Local Transport Note 120, which Councillor Mason's going to read, I'm sure that would be delightful.
AI, let's get a summary from AI.
That doesn't override the design manual for roads and bridges, which is actually where the sort of safety sits. So safety designs for highways sit with design manuals for road and bridges. I'm sorry, this is horribly technical, and I'm not going to read it all either myself, but so safety, much as we're worried about it's not prioritised enough, actually you can't design a scheme outside of the design manual for roads and bridges, which is the government's safety process for designing. LTM 120 is actually a design guide specifically looking at active travel, but it doesn't override the broader safety mechanism policy that's written down. And just to Councillor Mason's point earlier, I don't think those 5 are a zero-sum game. So I think you couldn't offset safety by having really good scores in the other 4 if you had bad safety. Right. Of those other 5, I don't think they'd let you do that. Well, they shouldn't let you do that anyway. So I mean, so much as you were saying about, is it 5 and you add them up and see what score you get. I don't think you can offset safety by having a really cohesive scheme, but it's really dangerous. I don't think that was the case. That you wouldn't be able to do it, which is why it's kind of it's a bit more narrative and qualitative than perhaps you'd like, Councillor Mason, because I know quantitative would be your bag in this. So I think there's a bit more, I don't want to say flexibility because that doesn't help with definitions, but there is, you couldn't like say, well, we'll just put a massive ramp in that you've got to leave the river with, but that makes the scheme really cohesive because it will be horribly dangerous. I mean, fun potentially, but horribly dangerous. So yeah, I hope that helps a bit with some clarity.
Yeah, it does indeed. I'm still considering this safety issue because I accept what you say about safety. It's also a technical issue as well because it's going to be designed into any scheme. But if you look at the prioritisation at the moment, I'm coming back to you, Fiona. Should we not be consulting with potential users on whether they think what we're offering is actually going to be used?
Yeah, so when we did the consultation for the LC whip, we had, I think it's about 1,100 comments.
Right.
And because we did it on a map-based system, I don't know, remember, we did commonplace and we drew all the routes, and people did comment on individual routes and identify concerns that they had. So they didn't necessarily comment on the LC whip as a document, but they did comment on routes. So that has allowed us to understand, not everyone, because not everyone responded, but a percentage of people's opinion on certain routes, which is why that will be taken into account when we do the prioritisation.
Yes.
So that consultation has really helped. I think going forward, we're obviously not going to consult every single year, but things like the local access forum and members speaking to us does allow us to have that qualitative information that we can store and we can take into account when we come up with the next list of 10. And the prioritisation list will need to look at all factors, but also it needs to look at whether reasonably we will get funding to do this. So if, say, we have a new housing development come in and we know we're going to have a Section 106 contribution, which is the money the developer gives us, we could go, yes, this scheme is going to go up the prioritisation because it's going to be built within the next couple of years because it's a planning requirement. There may be some priorities that we go, that's really important, but there's just no funding streams at the moment that we are able to have this funded out of. So it may be that we have kind of like a top 10 delivery scheme list, and then almost like a top 10 or top 20. We want this, but we haven't identified funding. Yeah, dream sheet. Yeah. If I had unlimited money, what would my top 10 be? Would probably be very different to what it would be.
I've got a different issue in funding, which I'm going to raise shortly, the Council Price being here. So are we saying that local access forum is really the sounding board on safety and perceived
I'm happy to
use?
I'm happy to kind of advice from many members about how to do it. The local access forum is great for me. If there's any other route, Dave and I are going to go speak to the Royal College of the Blind soon to talk to them about how we can work with them. So happy to do more. It doesn't have to just be one, it doesn't have to be one group coming to me. I'm happy to speak to multiple people. I like chatting.
I mean, Simon, can we have that as an action point in our recommendation?
Yes.
Because I know they've been talked local access. Perceived safety is everything. I mean, I get it from residents saying I won't walk along Walford Road at night, young women, because the lighting's not good enough. They're concerned. And it is that perception, not the actual design of the route, it's the perception and how you actually meet that. And because at the end of the day, as you say in the plan, one of the benefits is the health and well-being of residents. Well, they don't actually use it, they're not going to get any actual benefit from it. Councillor Pebedy.
So this point is kind of moving into the fourth suggestion.
Yeah, I'm going to go
but this
into
is
that.
about cohesion and consultation and funding. So as a market town, we've got a market town public realm grant that we're deciding how to spend at the moment. And as part of that, we commissioned an audit from local volunteers about cohesion, and they walked around the whole town and looked at our drop curbs and the routes that they take. And so we've got this really useful information, and I know you've collected this information through your consultation process, but I think in terms of kind of wider consultation, again, I'm coming back to the usefulness of kind of volunteer organisations and people who sort of live in those places to support that.
Happy to take on. The market town strategies design.
The movement studies.
Yeah, we've taken those into account in our plan. So that was really helpful to us. Obviously some of them are quite old now, not old in that old, but in the terms of our world, after 2 or 3 years they get a bit out of date. So it's something we can continually review. And I think one thing I'd really like is for the public who feel unsafe, or to feel that they can come directly to us with things that they would like us to be able to focus on, or going through their local member, which you guys are my sounding board for the public. If they come to you and you send me kind of this road there's a perceived safety issue on this road, happy to record that data and bring that into the LCWIP plan.
Okay. Councillor Hyde. Sorry. It's all right. You're part of the.
Sorry. I wanted to clarify about where we've seen market towns, Hereford. I've got villages in my ward. Some of them are off main roads, so walking and cycling is not a problem around them. 2 of them are actually on busy main roads, and one of them has got no footpath for part of the road that goes through the village, and people have to walk along it. Students actually, to get the school bus, they have to walk half a mile along an A road with no footpath.
Right.
Now, is that sort of thing included in the LCWIP?
If we're aware of it, it would be. If it's something that hasn't been identified in any of the kind of reports we've done, or hasn't come up in a public consultation, possibly not. But it's something that should definitely be in the plan.
Right.
So are you happy to take that?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. I mean, of course I've written up to our highways people about it, but it obviously hasn't got through to you. Yeah.
Yeah, fine. We'll leave that as an action point for you. Councillor Mason.
Sorry, it's just related to this, building on, I have similar issues which have been raised before, but I'd come back to your 10-kilometre observation that the LCWIP is within 10 kilometres of, was that specifically the metric, that it's within 10 kilometres of the towns?
It's considered a reasonable cyclable distance, which is why it's 10 kilometres.
So a conurbation such as Webley, which is about 12 kilometres from any one of the other market towns, would be excluded from it.
It wouldn't be excluded, but it wouldn't have a link between. It wouldn't naturally have that we would link the 2 centres together. It doesn't mean we can't. It's just not what the current kind of approach that we get given would do it. It doesn't say we can't do it, and I'm happy to review it. And if there's suitable routes, let's put it in. And it's good to put it in, but it's not. Yeah, the 10 kilometres is what AT consider a reasonable cyclable distance.
Cycle, so it's like
Yeah, but you're within 10 kilometres of a market town. It's just not Leominster.
Right.
It's Kington.
Well, just to deal with that point before I go into the last 2 points, and then we'll have to consider our recommendations. We were concerned about the detail in the plan, where there was sufficient detail to help the likes of Councillor Highfield and Councillor Mason to determine where the sort of schemes you would like to be in the plan would actually qualify for the plan. We don't have a recommendation around more detail in the plan because we're quite conscious that it is quite detailed as it is. How do you want us to take that forward? Do you want individual members to talk to you about individual
Yeah, I'm happy with
routes?
that. That's
Would that be
fine.
the best way of taking it forward, committee? Because otherwise we're then going to get into some sort of torturous debate about a recommendation. What is the level of detail that should be in the plan?
I think
And I
similarly,
really would like to avoid that if I can.
I was using my example as a way to see if there was a problem with it.
Yeah.
That was all I was doing. Apologies for bringing my.
I think for me, with active travel, I think we need to, the channels of when you come to the active travel service, requesting stuff should be very similar to if you go to highways and ask for a new crossing or a pothole fixed, or, you know, it should just be a natural thing that you do is go, oh, this would be great, I'll email the active travel team. It shouldn't be anything out of the norm that you are able to do that. And hopefully having the LC whip will allow that cultural change, which again will help us become a level 2, because that's then part of our, it's part of our everyday. It's not by exception that you do it. It's just, oh yeah, a member of the public says, I'd love a route here to, oh yeah, that's fine. I'll just ask the infrastructure team to do it, and we'll put it on our list and we'll start prioritising it.
But it is a living document. You say it's going to get reviewed every year. So perhaps just to note that you need to go out to members every year and ask them for suggestions as well.
Good point.
Do we need a recommendation for that? Daniel, what do you think?
I think so.
I think so. As long as it's noted in the minutes, Simon, that we would like, since the LC whip is going to be reviewed annually, for members to be consulted on it as well, in case they do have any routes. I've got 2 further areas I want to cover. One is Councillor Owen's point, and it's buried in one of the recommendations. And the other one is funding, Councillor Price, because I want to go back to the way we used to fund certain safety crossings and that across the county. Councillor Owens said, why do we have an ambition that we create routes that are accessible to all? In the actual KLOE discussion we had, the Key Lines Inquiry, Councillor Owen, we were concerned that the plan was maybe overly concentrated on cycling and not enough emphasis on walking and wheeling. We've got a recommendation in there, which I'm going to test for you. Do you think that's true? Do you think with the emphasis is too much on cycling?
So the hierarchy of road users is that pedestrians are the number 1 priority, then
Right.
cycling, then cars, then buses and HGV.
Right.
So so in my mind, it's not. It might be I read it differently, and it may be it hasn't come across in the way it should. But for what we do, the prioritisation will always go along the hierarchy of road users, which is the pedestrian first.
And how do you make Councillor Owen's point about that ambition of having a plan that is going to actually meet equal access for all?
So by prioritising the pedestrian infrastructure, that allows things like wheelchairs, parents with buggies, they are prioritised because they're considered pedestrians in the kind of hierarchy of road users, which is why they come before cyclists.
Yes.
Which is so if there's only space to have cyclists or pedestrians would automatically get that space. And it may be that we have to then have cyclists share space with cars, which is not ideal, but pedestrians are always the first choice. Hopefully that answers kind of that question.
I mean, staying with the hierarchy of the highway code, and I've got examples every day where drivers don't know what the hierarchy is. Because if I'm crossing one of the side roads in Ross and they want to turn, they've got to stop and let me go. But I always have to give way to them because they're heavier and it could cause a by-election, so I've got to be very careful. Is there anything we need? I'm not saying it should be in the plan because it's an educational thing with drivers and it needs to be done with the police. how do we take that forward? Because I've raised this before when we've been talking about road safety within the committee and with the police were there, that drivers are not really educated about the hierarchy in the highway code and that the most vulnerable users of the road do high priority, not walking down the middle carriageway. I'm not saying that on the road, but where there may be times when the two come together for very good reason, not because there's anything illegal going on, then the drivers need to know that pedestrians and cyclists and wheelers have the right of way. I'm going to bring Councillor Pebbley first and Councillor Highfield, and then we can just see where we might take that forward, and Councillor Thomas. Councillor Pebbley.
That makes me think about pavement parking.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I understand that legislation is changing
Yeah.
and that local authorities will have the power.
Yeah. To enforce it.
Yeah, it's such an important part of our kind of cohesion and safety. I just wonder whether that should be a recommendation for the LC whip as well.
So we are writing a parking strategy at the moment, which will be presented to members towards the end of this month, before we look at doing formal consultation with the public in April, May time. So you will see it hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And that has a dedicated section on pavement parking and how the difficulty we have at the moment is the government haven't announced how those powers are going to be given. So whether it's going to be an act of parliament that makes pavement parking illegal everywhere, or whether they're local restrictions that we can add on.
Bylaws. So
we could put in a PRO to say this is, so we don't know. So there's a bit of uncertainty about how we're going to get those powers, what it's going to allow us to do. But it does form a big part of our parking strategy, is that pavement parking is something we need to do. And I think one of the pushes we're doing, and you'll see when the strategy comes to you, is as the public want us to do something, we will do it. So parking is enforced how the public want us to do it. So where there's areas where pavements are being blocked because a car's parking, you can't get a pram or even you can't get a person down. We would prioritise those for enforcement measures.
And that's a separate document.
It's a separate document.
So we can leave it until then, okay? Councillor Highfield?
Yeah, I wanted to support what you said. If you improve driver behaviour without building any infrastructure, you make cycling and walking better. I don't ride my bicycle in the vicinity of my house because it's too scary. And that's the simple reason I don't. And actually, Kington Town is 3 miles away. It's a very suitable ride for an old fart like me, but especially as I've got a little electric motor that helps my bicycle. But it's too dangerous. It's too risky, and trucks going past your shoulders with 6 inches clearance is enough. So to reinforce that point, is there anything in the LC whip which might fund not just infrastructure, but driver education, public education?
The LC whip is just about infrastructure. So it's an infrastructure plan. We do get revenue funding from Active Travel England to do other measures. So that could be that we spend it on designs or feasibility studies, but we also can, and I think we should do it on education pieces, which we can look at. And part of that is, I don't think the government, I shouldn't criticise government online. I don't think they made a big enough deal of the change of the highway code a couple of years ago. People just weren't aware of it. And unless you worked in the industry, everyone looked at me like I was daft when I said, well, no, you don't have priority. But that doesn't stop us as a council doing it. So that education piece, once this document's adopted and I can focus on the next bit, education is key. So if there are pieces of work that you think are more important, like getting our residents and our drivers to know the highway code has changed, more than happy to prioritise that within our education.
I'll touch upon that in a minute because we do have a recommendation. I don't know if it's outstanding on it, yeah, Simon. Councillor Thomas, you wanted to come in.
Well, I was just thinking, motorists aren't as ignorant as you think they are. And when I have conversations with people, everybody knows about the bike thing. It's a case of, how can we put it, there may be a slightly arrogance, because at the end of the day, the motorist is what pays for the roads. The cyclists pay nothing. And this is a perception, and with most people that I come across that drive, think, well, they've been given extra priorities. They don't deserve extra priorities because they don't pay for anything. I think if cyclists had to pay a license fee, same as we do, I think their attitude might be a little bit different. But I just think that, you know, we're putting too much on the fact that motorists don't know. I think they all do know. Yeah, they would need to be in shells if they didn't know, because the bike thing was on television numerous times.
My wife and I were nearly knocked down when we were away near Hastings, and we got a foul mouth rant from the female passenger, not the driver, because they came down the road, they didn't indicate, and we were already crossing the road, and they nearly drove into us. We were getting all sorts of blue language at us. It really shocked my wife. I'm sorry, I just do not agree. I do think there's a lot of drivers out there who feel that they own the road and that no one else should be on it. But I don't want to get into that debate, but it's certainly my experience that drivers do not take account of pedestrians. And we get drivers doing 50, 60 miles in the wet along Walford Road, and you get the spray from them as well as a pedestrian. So, I mean, it happens too often. Councillor Owens, and I'm going to go to the clerk, because I think in the appendix, we did have the road safety recommendations, Simon, I think in the appendix that was supplied. I want to just touch upon that, because that may be something we have to then drive forward. Councillor Owens?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to clarify for the minutes on what Councillor Thomas said, that road tax was abolished in the 1930s by Winston Churchill. And I think Dr. Land can perhaps correct me if I'm wrong.
No,
but,
well, 1928, but yeah, that's right.
And vehicle excise duty does not pay for the roads. I think it's just wanted to note that cyclists have as much right to use the roads as anyone else. In fact, since the roads were built for cyclists, essentially they have more right to use them.
They were built for horse and
Cars, yeah.
And that's the mapping of the road system was done for cyclists. Then cars took over.
This committee has had a recommendation on education reform and road safety. Simon, is it in the appendix? I think it is.
Yes, the active the road safety recommendation.
Can we pursue that and see where we are with that? Because it is actually a big issue here in terms of trying to make joint routes where you won't be able to have traffic-free routes because it's not possible because of the infrastructure constraints. Joint routes where really all users need to know what the hierarchy of use is there. I mean, I'm thinking of riders or horses as well, where I always slow down and really try to not disturb the animal. And on some of these country lanes, you're really quite close to a rider, and they could be thrown, and that could be actually quite fatal. I think there is recommendations in there, aren't there?
Yes, absolutely.
So I'll give you an action point, Simon, to perhaps pursue whether, if we have had the responses from them, then I think you and me should review it and see whether we're happy with it.
Okay.
And if not, we'll go back to the appropriate officers and pursue it through that route, rather than having another recommendation here.
Yeah.
Because that had the police involved as well. It is a very thorny subject, particularly if you are trying to use the road.
And I think for the LC whip, it's an infrastructure plan. So we can address safety concerns as in a reason why we build infrastructure, but the wider road safety kind of argument doesn't fit naturally within the LC whip. It fits a bit more naturally in the LC.
I agree. And that's why I'm saying we did have that previous scrutiny, which was separate from the LC whip.
And yet spending £10,000 on infrastructure would achieve almost nothing. £10,000 on publicity would achieve quite a lot.
It would be.
Yeah.
My final point, because I'm anxious, we do look at the recommendations. So I think the recommendations we've got there, bar one to be cancelled and one to be amended, are pretty good. I want to go on to funding, Councillor Price. And this is back to your previous time, pre-2019. When I wanted to put a cross in Ross, before the movement study was done for Ross, I had a very interesting day with a Balfour BT road engineer. The crossing was going to cost about £50,000. But it was really a no-brainer for safety. I mean, the traffic was steaming up, coming up too fast a corner, coming around, and we needed a crossing before any accidents happened, because obviously that was always an issue. And what the Balfour BT engineer said to me, if there are no accident statistics, then the crossing will not be built. But he also told me, Councillor Price, there used to be a capital line which was specific for spend on safety and pedestrian crossings across the county. He made that point. And what I want to say today, it is pertinent to the LC WIP because we've had discussions, particularly myself and Councillor Highfield, about the funding tail wagging the policy dog. I really am unhappy when I keep hearing, oh, we'll scramble around for a bit of S106 money. We'll scramble around for a grant here or a grant there. We've got this with the skate park in Ross where we're trying to do something wonderful for the youth. We'll transform the facilities that will be available. And then the top suddenly becomes, can we get some S106 money? Can we get some sports foundation grant funding? And I just feel this is the same with this plan. I mean, it's a wonderful plan. But if we don't get level 2 authority status, where else are we? And as you know, funding was one of the issues that we raised as part of our active travel previous scrutiny. So I want to put a recommendation in there, Councillor Price, that there should be re-established a line in the capital programme purely for safety measures across the county, road safety measures across the county. And I'm asking members whether you agree with that.
To come into what we said before, I've had a lot of thoughts since our last conversation, and I don't understand why we don't say, you know, if there's questions raised about a particular road safety issue on a road, even without accidents, if a qualified highways engineer goes and looks at it, says, yeah, that's not safe because that should be just as good as having 3 dead. I mean, so before people are injured or hurt, if a qualified engineer said that's not safe because, then it should be in there as something that needs to be done.
As capital.
So,
I'll bring you in a minute.
firstly, that Balfour Beatty person, horrified that they said that to you. That is not how we work. Obviously, if there has been an accident, we work with the police, and if there are requirements that we work with the police to deliver improvements if there's been a KSI. I've never worked in that way that I would only build something if there's been an accident. So
no, there was a lack of accidents that was the reason.
Which is why, but that's something that Balfour Beatty engineer is incorrect, because that is not how the funding does work. I've never worked in a council where that's been the case. We obviously work with the police if there has been one, but we would always a potential risk is equally as important to me as an actual risk.
Well, that's interesting because I've got a mini roundabout where residents have been shouting for ever to get it at least flattened, and we keep getting the excuse there's been no accident.
And I'd have to challenge that because I've had answers from our own highways team. We will not consider a TRO in this area because there's no accident data.
No accident data.
I'd love to, if you have those examples, please do send them, because I that's not the approach that we should be taking, and that's not the road safety approach the government would want us to take. So it'd be good to know that, because for me, if you look at accident data, if we had a KSI and it was because somebody was drunk or on drugs, that's got absolutely no bearing on whether it's an unsafe road or not. Yeah. So you can have as many, so near misses are almost equally as, I think equally as important to take into account, because KSIs there's a number of factors on KSIs that don't necessarily mean, if I had a road that there was a KSI and somebody was on drugs and the police came back and said there's nothing wrong with the road layout, why would I prioritise that over where I've had the parish council said we've got a petition from residents saying they've nearly been run over 20 times. Do you know what I mean? So that kind of argument doesn't wash.
That's refreshing, but it's not our experience as members. Councillor Foxton before Councillor Mason. Okay. You're quiet. Yeah. Councillor Mason, this is the last point, and then we're going to have a break, comfort break, where officers can then leave if they don't want to wait for the waste. And Councillor Mason.
We talked about this a little bit earlier. I'm very, very glad to hear this thing about perceived risk. I wonder whether it's a TRO thing versus somewhere else.
It's highways as well.
Yeah, I wonder whether in certain areas that becomes a consideration, in certain areas it doesn't. I'm very glad to hear that our view on this doesn't fall into this trap, because We talked about.
And we've got a video recording.
You have.
Yes.
I think also, so the local transport grant, which we get from government, is so that we can deliver the local transport plan. That is what is currently funding the market town investment.
Yes.
Funded.
That, yeah.
So, and that's only for next year because the work will be completed hopefully by then. But we have a 4-year allocation. Year one starts in April, and we need to, by the end of this year, go to government, end of this month, go to government with what our plan is for the 4 years. And an element of that funding has been proposed to be ring-fenced for road safety. So there will always be an element of road safety work coming out of the local transport plan, which obviously if this is a child document of that, would make sure that this has some kind of priority.
And if you can revisit our recommendations, because there are good recommendations, but they need the police involved as well.
Yeah.
This is not just council, this is police need to be involved. And that's the problem when it comes to accident statistics. The police do not necessarily take action unless there's been accidents.
I do want to make a point, actually. Forgive me, I do want to make a point. The point I wanted to make was your issue about Section 106 money being used to fund stuff is spot on. The reason why is if funding is purely contingent on other houses being built, we lose the ability to prioritise where we need to. That's the absolutely fundamental point.
And safety is a big issue
Exactly
that the committee has
Because the central
recognised.
pot, that money should be used where it's required, not where houses are being built.
Yes, fine.
Yeah.
That's the last word. Thank you very much. That's been a great debate.
Do we not want to hear from councillor Price back on that point?
Oh no, we're making a recommendation and it's up to executive to respond whatever way they want to
I
respond.
would just point out on that very point you're making, Peterchurch is just having a £10 million secondary school built in the middle of it, and part and parcel of getting it was a pedestrian crossing outside of it.
Oh, I'm not saying it doesn't.
And the funding for it was the biggest challenge I've had personally as a ward member, because the 106 agreements for the housing estate that's being built next door to it, which is now being built, the 106 agreement had all been put in place way before anybody thought about the pedestrian crossing. So they can't change the funding once that's agreed 10 years down the road.
S106 funded.
S106 funding. So it's not 106 funded, it's been funded through highways because it's a requirement outside of a new school to have that pedestrian crossing. And that funding did not come from the 89 houses that have been built adjacent to it.
And this is exactly what the committee's saying. We need a separate line in capital to cover road safety measures.
They're taking Section 106 in money in one of my villages to pay for a pedestrian crossing outside a school. But it really ought to be paid for by highways. It's not really because of the school, you know.
Okay, fine. I'm going to call a comfort break.
Chairman, there's just one little thing. I've got a nagging thing I need to ask you for your opinion on as a committee.
All right, fire away.
Rather than, you know, what your normal proceedings. I have a problem in that I'm asked about e-scooters.
Yes.
Now, I don't know where anybody's, as councillors, whether you have a thought on it, because currently e-scooters are illegal, but they're likely to become. Now, do they fit in LC whip type policy? Do they fit in as a motor vehicle? What do you have a view on it? Because what will happen is we will be beset by having to have a trial of these things at some point. And where will they go? Because if they roar across Hightown or anywhere, you know, I can see problems, but I'm just asking for an opinion from you. You don't have to be today, but if you think it's part of LC whip, and maybe you need to add it to your.
Well, I'll give you this thought. E-scooters can go as fast as cyclists, so you can't really distinguish it on speed. That's the one issue, because cyclists can go past you at 20 miles an hour. Mobility scooters can go past you at fair rate and they're like, oh, the others. I mean, so we can't do it at speed. I think the issue would be whether the government made them subject to road tax. If they're not subject to road tax, then I think they'd have to be considered as part of the wheeling fraternity.
Because at the moment they're talking about a higher trial here, like they've got in Bristol and one or two other places. That's sort of stage one. That's before a national authorisation for them.
So the trials currently run until 2028. There's a number across the country. You can apply to be a trial area if you want. That's the current position. So until 2028, we won't know what the government's kind of long-term approach is going to be on it.
I think we've applied for Hereford City, haven't we? or the Hereford City
I
Council
think
has.
part of our Beryl contract would make it very easy for us to become an e-scooter trial area. We'd have to change our contract and there would be kind of commercial requirements over that. I think it's more, is it something that the city actually wants? Because, you know, we can limit speed, things like that, but they're very controversial and sometimes, you know, perceived unsafe. Statistics say they're not unsafe, but I think that's what Council Price is wondering. What, as a committee and as members, what do you think? You know, should we become a trial area? Should we lobby government and say, yeah, make us one, or should we be going, actually, we want to work with you, and then when 2028 is over, if it becomes something we have to do, then we can do it then.
Well, the issue is, do you want e-scooters waving between cars? Or do you want them treated as part of this active travel?
They would never go on pedestrian space.
No.
They wouldn't go on the
They're
pavement.
treated as motor vehicles.
They would go on the road. They wouldn't go on.
Well, there's your answer. They'd have to go on the roads then, Philip, so. I
Just-
don't think you could be part of LC with then.
I check this because if you look at like,
No.
the
Yeah.
first county that I looked at was Cambridgeshire. They include e-scooters as part of wheeling.
So we
You're not
wouldn't.
supposed to.
Not
It's supposed to be non-motorised vehicles.
Yeah, if
and
it's non-motorised scooters, we would consider them. So if it's like the kids ones,
Okay, so there's the answer. It's non-motorised scooters and nothing more. That's what you're saying.
But Philip would still like us to feed back about how we feel about it.
Yeah. I was asked a month or two back, would I agree to the pilot for e-scooters in Herefordshire? And that presented me with a problem, and that's why I'm asking you. I want your opinion on it so that I can make a better judgment on it, because I don't feel I'm in a position to make any judgment on it as a cabinet member as to whether or not I should even allow something that is currently illegal to be legal, even through following a pilot. I just want some more views from people that are discussing this sort of thing.
I mean, I think definitely you have to build evidence to make really, really good evidence-based decisions. So I would totally support a pilot and a trial here in Hereford.
You would.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
well, you've got e-bikes. You've got e-bikes. So are you going to treat e-bikes separately from e-scooters?
e-bikes aren't illegal. I think that's the difference.
No,
So-
but when they are legal.
That's what I mean. I think that's the difference. We can't.
No,
we
but
can't
when
stop
e-scooters are
e-bikes.
legal,
Yeah.
e-bikes are part of wheeling.
Yes.
Then e-scooters would have to be part of wheeling. I can't see it.
Let me clarify, a motor vehicle is a vehicle capable of being driven by an engine. And a power-assisted bicycle is not capable of being driven by an engine. It needs to be pedalled and an engine together. So it is not a motor vehicle,
Right.
whereas an e-scooter is a motor vehicle.
Yeah. So I think what I mean is, an e-bike is allowed to go on cycle infrastructure.
Right.
A scooter, an e-scooter is not.
Correct.
So don't include it there.
I'm hearing that e-scooters are not allowed to go on anything but roads.
Yes.
And you can have a trial, that's fine. But I just needed you to be aware that when you hear that there's a pilot of e-scooters, don't have the conversation then, have the conversation now, that's what I'm saying.
Thank you, Councillor Price, for giving us another conundrum.
I mean, I'm the only one that responded to that, but
Yeah.
maybe everyone agrees.
But I agree.
Okay.
Evidence-based decision making.
Yeah,
Excellent, thank you.
okay.
I look
Right.
forward to your recommendations.
It's not going to be an e-scooters.
I can see you in the newspaper. Don't blame me, it was that long.
Councillor Price just wants a photo of him
We're
on
going
one.
to have a 15-minute comfort break so that Daniel and myself can also look at the recommendations that we had and see where Started again, Si. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to put our recommendations up on the screen. You should not, members, be surprised by them because they were potential recommendations that we had from our key lines of inquiry. I mean, Daniel, do you want to just talk through them? Or if you're happy for the view just to read?
Yeah, so those are there are 7 recommendations in total. I'll put them on the screen. The first 4 are there. I'll read them out when we vote on them, if that's okay. I just want to make sure first that you're, as a committee, you're happy with them, and then I'll read them out for the
Okay.
meeting recording.
Well, we need to see all 7, of course, so that's the first 4.
Has he got?
Yes, the one thing that we had under active travel, which I remember just after I had spoke to Fiona, was that we wanted the LC WIP to build on the active travel projects that were already in train. And that's where that recommendation number 6 comes into its own. And with active travel projects already in delivery, that refers back to the active travel recommendation we had in that, where we felt there was a disconnect between the plan and what was going on at the moment, and we just felt they needed to lead back to that and make sure they were building on it. Because if you're putting a new project in somewhere, then it may be that you shouldn't necessarily be looking to put another project side by side with it.
No, and I think Justine mentioned cohesion was the things got to fit together, you know.
Yeah, I know that.
So
Yeah.
existing and building and planned things have all got to be part of a cohesive whole. I think that was.
And that's the idea of ensuring alignment with all the other plans.
Yeah.
So that 6th one does take up that last active travel recommendation, Simon, that we had covered in the meeting, so that's fine.
And I would note in defence, really, if you go back a few years, there was no cycling infrastructure. Cyclists just used the roads. There was already for decades a lot of footpaths and pavements and so on for pedestrians. So naturally, if you're trying to improve cycling and wheeling, walking and wheeling, there's bound to be a bit more being spent on the wheeling bit because it is so sparse compared with the existing footpath network. So inevitably, really.
So,
So are you talking about the last recommendation there?
Yeah, I don't disagree with it. I'm just saying that one of the reasons it appears that there's more emphasis on wheeling is simply because of the historical imbalance between the two.
I just wonder how Finn can respond to that, because she didn't recognise that in the plan.
yeah, but we did, and we did it on KLOE. So I'll leave it as a recommendation, which you can respond by saying that she doesn't agree with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
If that's the point. But at least we've raised the issue. And we did talk about safety, we did talk about pedestrians, we did talk about wheeling. So we got to concentrate on them as well. Councillor Mason.
I mean, on that last one, avoiding an overemphasis, of course, you can't but agree with avoiding an overemphasis, because that would just be, you know, that's obviously saying don't do something stupid. But can we go back to the 4th one, please?
So are you saying take out the last phrase?
No, I think the last, what I'm saying is that is a bit apple pie, isn't it?
Well, remove the word over.
Well, let's come back to it. The one I wanted to talk to was about the 3rd one. To give the greatest possible weighting to safety when selecting routes and projects outside Hereford City. Having heard what we heard, I'm not sure that's truly what we want to do. And the reason why I say that is that what we actually heard was that although the weighting is supposed to be equal, there's an awful lot of flexibility about it because it's all qualitative. And do we actually want to say that effectively the only criteria by which we do work is safety? Because that is effectively what that's saying, to give the greatest possible weighting to safety when selecting routes and projects.
Well, think about
the only thing that we care about.
Well, think about debate. We said that the issue was perceived safety, and if people didn't use the routes, it didn't matter how well they were designed, Didn't matter how attractive they were, how level they were, how short they were. If people didn't use the routes, then they were a waste of time.
So is it not in there that what we want to do is to ensure something along the lines of work with active travelling and to use DFT audit prioritizing methodology to ensure that safety, both perceived, potential and real, is properly addressed? Is it not more something around that we want than actually saying the weighting to safety when we know that the model?
I like it is.
Okay.
I like it like it is.
Like the reference to perceived safety, because I think that's so important as well.
Which isn't in there, is it?
Yeah,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah. I mean, I do think that's,
We need to enhance how we deal with safety
Okay.
rather than just say it's only about safety.
and I also think that it feels to me that there are contradictions about perceived safety and then, you know,
Okay,
so I
Well-
wouldn't mind a reference to.
why don't we say to give more weighting to safety and in brackets, including perceived safety?
I'm happy with that.
Okay?
Okay.
To give more weighting, because I take the point, we don't want to lose the cohesion side of it, because that's equally important as well, of course.
Thank you.
But we would like things to be attractive if we can, council folks. We'd like the weeds to be occasionally pulled up when they can be.
Yeah, well, this is another point that's too trivial, but I mean, attractiveness, that's my attractiveness might not be your
I know,
attractiveness.
It's an opportunity actually for
I'm
parish
not
council.
attractive at all, you know.
you're making a comment on my looks, Mr. Right, that's fine. Right, we've made those slight adjustments to the first four, and then going to the last one, what we've done is we've taken out the over, councillor Mason, so we're just talking about emphasis. If you show the last one again, but councillor Mason, the second page, the last recommendation,
That's it.
right? There it is,
The plan, content and investment.
avoiding, take out over, avoiding emphasis on cycling infrastructure alone. I think that sort of meets your point, councillor Mason. Or do you still think it's unnecessary?
I still don't like the word wheeling, I'm sorry, it doesn't mean anything to anybody, I don't think.
That's right.
It'll have to be defined in the document, I think,
Yeah.
and then it
Can
will.
you elaborate on it and make it
well, I
really
know that
clear what
that's
it is, yeah.
Elaborated on.
All right, with these changes, do you want us to vote on them?
Yeah, Chair, I'll read them out just for the purposes of the recording. So the committee is proposing 7 recommendations as follows. 1, define wheeling clearly and ensure compliance with the definition, including Equality Act considerations in all projects in the plan. 2, ensure the local transport plan objectives are at the front of the local cycling, wheeling, walking infrastructure plan. 3, work with Active Travel England to use the Department for Transport, to use the Department for Transport audit prioritisation methodology to give more weighting to safety and perceived safety when selecting routes and projects outside Hereford City. 4, reintroduce a dedicated capital programme line for crossings, drops, curbs and other safety and cohesion measures rather than relying solely on Active Travel England or Section 106.
We should maybe say Active Travel England funding. Sorry, Daniel, it should be ATE funding there.
Or Section 106.
Yes. Or it could be funding
Or
after
Section
both, yeah, that
106
one, yeah. Yeah, just to make it clear for anyone reading it, thank you.
Okay.
Right.
5, integrate and make best use of the extensive public rights of way network in upgrades and route choices, including first/last mile links to public transport. 6, ensure alignment across the suite of transport strategies, local cycling, wheeling, walking infrastructure plan, local transport plan, bus strategies, etc. And with active travel projects already in delivery, cross-check against market town movement studies. And 7, balance the plan content and investment between walking, wheeling and cycling, avoiding an emphasis on cycling infrastructure alone.
Thank you, Daniel. First, are we happy to vote for these en bloc? Can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you. Second, is the committee happy with the 7 recommendations? Show of hands, please. That's unanimous. Thank you very much for your work there. I think that was an excellent debate. Thank you, Daniel. Now we move on to waste. And I'm going to give 45 minutes for this. I know we're not going to have much time for a work programme, but as I said at the Key Lines of Inquiry meeting, I would like to have an informal work programme meeting in between the quarterly meetings, because I think it's good for the cohesion and the bonding of the committee to come together from time to time as a committee. So if we don't discuss much in the work programme today, or in the bus study TNF, then we can do that at the informal, and we can have a longer time then. So 45 minutes, and the 45 minutes reflects that we've already, for some of us, scrutinised this area before waste. We've also had updates on it before. And this today is an update on the waste disposal service, including the potential new contract and the rollout of the garden waste collection service. We have 4 areas of interest here, which we call about clarification, councillors, with us officers, rather than about really going over what's been going on, because I think waste is one of those areas where we can pat ourselves on the back as a council, where we've done really well in terms of what we want to do. But there are 4 areas. First of all, we want to look at the current position in the waste disposal service, particularly the amounts going to landfill, because we did have that aim to have 0 to landfill before. I'd also like to know what's happening to the end-to-end process in that service, because that was another virtue that we discussed before in the committee, about making sure we had an end-to-end service rather than being fragmented with various contractors involved. We want to talk with the garden waste service, particularly in terms of take-up and whether you're confident we're going to break even. We want to talk about the food waste service that was planned and that has been put on hold. In fact, my wife asked at the weekend what's happening to it. So there is quite a lot of interest out there amongst residents about why we don't have a food waste service yet. And I do want to talk about that. And finally, the other major part that we had in terms of the waste collection service was to separate out more the recycling items into paper and cardboard, glass and plastic. So that's the 4 areas of classification. Nicola, do you want to just take us through them in terms of just one by one, telling us exactly where we are at as far as you can tell us this time? Then I'll open up the debate for members for each of those 4 areas, okay? We start with the waste disposal first, thanks.
So at the moment, and you might have to remind me of the points you've just gone through, the aim for I'm not sure we aim for 0 waste to landfill. Our aim was no more than 1% waste to landfill. And that's because there will always be an element of waste that potentially cannot be dealt with in any other way. So for example, at the moment, asbestos can't be dealt with in any other way. So we are hitting the target, and we have been hitting the target for the past couple of years for not more than 1% of our Herefordshire's waste to go to landfill. What is going to landfill is, as I say, the asbestos waste, and then sometimes when the energy from waste facility is being maintained and they have to have a closed down period at the EFW, whilst they do try to hold back and make sure that the bunker areas are completely clear so that they can pile up some of the waste where permitted to do so for a period of time during that outage. Not all of the waste can wait until the facility is back online. So they do use that period of time to send some of the waste to landfill. But apart from that, Herefordshire's waste on the whole is going either being dealt with obviously through recycling or whatever else, or not going through the energy from waste facility.
And when it comes to the 29 renewal, are we going to have the same targets for that new contract as well?
Yeah, well, we've certainly looked to write those things in. I think it'd be backwards move to go in a different direction. The energy from waste facility is ours, we own it between ourselves and Worcestershire. At 2029, the landfill site itself actually reverts to the contractor, so we don't have landfill space at that point in time. So there will have to be, I mean, it will still be there, but depending on who the contractor is and what the makeup of that is, the use of a landfill site will need to be looked at differently.
So in terms of end-to-end service, because I also noted within the document, thanks for the paper, by the way, I should have said that from the start. There was some talk about hiving off the household recycling centres. And I thought that was in the paper somewhere.
Not in what I've sent you.
But there's no intention of doing that because.
So at the moment, we're looking at what that contract will look like and whether moving forward with that contract. We've had a PFI contract in place since 1998, and it's an all-in high risk on the contractor contract. So they manage everything. We have very little to consider or worry about.
Right.
Moving forwards, it's unlikely that we will get something of a similar nature. Because of the waste industry and the way it is. So what we need to look at is whether we perhaps separate out or lot up the way that we dispose and treat our waste moving forwards. So we could have different providers doing different things. So the Energy from Waste facility, for example, is one entity of things. And we jointly own that with Worcestershire. The household recycling centres potentially could be dealt with by somebody else. The haulage, when it comes to the waste industry, a lot of what you're doing is moving stuff between places. So actually logistics and breaking it up so that logistics is one of the factors. So there's quite a lot of different factors we need to look at in terms of that contract and how that will look and what the makeup of that will be moving forwards. The position we're in at the moment, though, is that we're looking at what that new procurement could look like or would look like, or as I've said in here, whether there actually is an option for a short extension to the current arrangements that are in place. And the reason that we're looking at that is because there's certain things coming in over the next few years that are going to change our waste composition and what that waste looks like. So the deposit return scheme, how is that going to affect what our waste composition looks like, what we've actually got in our recycling service and how we then need to treat that? We don't know. So, there are predictions that, you could achieve 80% of recovery of these items going back through reverse vending, but they haven't set the quantity that deposit will be. So actually we don't know what that will look like. The current extended producer responsibilities, which is that those people that put packaging onto the market have to pay for the full treatment of that. So we have had some funding from government coming back to help towards our cost of treating that, is aimed to change some of the packaging that is out there. There's a plastics tax out there. So there's some uncertainties around what our waste will look like in the future, which could make it a little bit more difficult for us in terms of moving forwards right now with a full procurement.
Councillor Swinghurst, I'm going to open up to the committee, but I really need to ask you this question. My concern is the more the process gets fragmented, whether it's outside our control or not, the more difficulty there is for us to make sure that the service is delivering what we want in terms of our overall requirements and targets. Has the Cabinet discussed these risks at all yet, and how are they going to deal with it? That's what I'm really wondering about. Because as you rightly say, Nicola, we can't expect the same end-to-end contract again necessarily.
Yeah, I think we're not far enough down the road to have had sufficient discussion over that, because really you need to look at options. There's a potential, clearly, for good and for ill. So you're right, there's a potential that it won't be as good, but there's also a potential that it will be better. That if you have very specific contracts that you can demand more of them, or there can be greater flexibility within them. So for me, the jury's out. I'm waiting to see what comes forward as a more detailed set of proposals. But but of course, the other point to bear in mind, as Nicola says, is the timing of all this. When we have a lot of uncertainty pushing through the pipe right now, which we're not in control of that. So in a sense, it's probably better to let that move through, and then we'll know more what it is we're trying to do once extended producer responsibility and deposit return and things like that have had their impact in the market, and then we know what that market looks like. It's a judgment, a balance, but where's the sweet spot for all this? So
taking away the zero aspect in terms of the landfill is less than 1%. I just wonder, members, whether this is an early warning, isn't it, system in a way, having had this update to see what's happening. I wonder, members, whether we still have a recommendation, a useful recommendation around those risks, Daniel, to at least set the scene that somewhere well before 2029, the Cabinet does need to start thinking seriously about the impact of all these changes and what's going to happen in terms of the new procurement. I think a recommendation along those lines, at least to trigger, and it'll be there for you, so that not 2 years down the line, somebody says, "Oh, I didn't think of that." We could say, "Well, at least the committee did forewarn you." So that would replace the zero rate recommendation with that one about to consider in good time the risks that coming out of the changes in the way the industry operates and the changes in the way the legislation operates for the recycling and disposal of waste. Councillor Highfield.
Yeah, I wanted to see some clarification. Now, 99% does not go to landfill. The difference between that and the amount that is recycled is the amount that's used for generating power. Is that right? That's the difference between the two. Now, if we are, I mean, one of our objectives, I believe, is that we want to increase the amount that we recycle rather than burn it. Is that going to affect the returns that we expect to get from our facility, which produces power? If we're actually sending less to that, successfully recycling more stuff, what's the implications of that to our finances?
What you've got thrown in the mix there is that come 2028, 29, the government are talking about introducing the emissions trading scheme. Within that, there's going to be a very, very high cost for any waste going through those energy from waste facilities which contain a carbon content, and that runs into the millions. So the priority actually for us as a local authority needs to be diversion and waste minimisation away from that energy from waste facility. The facility is there, and we do have an obligation to feed that facility with an amount of waste, but that doesn't have to be waste generated and collected by us as a local authority. We could put into that facility waste from businesses or industries or other local authorities. So for those, where landfill might not be attractive anymore, we could put into our facility other. So there's a commercial view there of actually we could use that facility for other things. So we're not paying, other people are paying to put their waste in there. And so commercially, it could look better for us moving to the future. Certainly in terms of reducing the amount of waste that we're putting through, because the amount of money it's going to cost through the ETS, which again is another uncertainty that we have at the moment. We don't know what that's going to cost. But all the indicators are that, and we've been looking at it for years, haven't we? Waste minimisation, create less waste, it costs you less, and look to other areas potentially to put into that energy from waste.
So there is a risk there that we might get. We could have the possibility of less revenue from our power generation, but we are hopeful, and I hope that's a reasonable hope, that we can mitigate that by actually sort of commercializing it as a facility. So would you think that's a reasonable hope to be able to do that? Because it's going to change the whole pattern, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I haven't looked necessarily across the country to see what the situation is with regards to capacity for waste across the board. So who might struggle? So for example, with the food waste coming in, there's not enough facility across the country to necessarily deal with all of that food waste, and there's been loads of studies and stuff done on that. I don't know what the situation is with regards to residual waste going through those facilities, but there's always going to be waste, and there's always going to be growing numbers of people, and you can never fully divert all of that, because we as a local authority are asking people nicely to do these things. They don't have to do these things. They can still use their black bin to their full extent if they wish to do so.
Councillor Pemberton?
I'm just trying to get this clear in my head, because as you were talking, it sounded like the regenerative heat incentive, you know, when they started kind of you start generating fuel to feed a facility where you don't really need it. You've got an obligation to feed this facility with a certain amount of waste. So I guess we just sort of don't want to be falling into a trap. I'm sure I haven't got it clear in my head where we're trying to find, is because that's what we're doing. We're trying to find waste then to feed a facility, because we have to meet a certain amount of waste that goes into that facility. Is that right?
Yeah, we will need to way down the line, if the current contract, when the current contract comes to an end. I can't remember the exact year on it now, but yes, there will be. But remember, across the country and probably across the region as well, there are facilities out there that may be coming to the end of their lives, and so actually it might be cheaper, who knows, for other people to look to an existing facility that's still quite a young facility to use, rather than actually, build or do something themselves.
It's like the anaerobic digesters, where people are creating stuff to create fuel to feed them, because there are incentives to kind of generate the energy through that thing. So I guess we just got to be like, not fall into a trap of
No, we're not going to create waste.
Yeah. Councillor Swinhouse, given all this uncertainty, I mean, the cabinet need to look at this in some sort of more detail, don't they? I don't know, a working group. I'm just trying to get my mind around this, because I don't want these things suddenly to appear and we don't really have the time to actually look at them and consider them and make good evidence-based decisions on it. Given what you're saying, Nicola, I do think that this is a piece of work here that needs to be done.
That's quite a good idea. Well, we had that task unfinished, didn't we? We did.
Yeah, but that's changing. I mean, that's changing. So what's that there?
So, finding the bandwidth to look into all the various aspects of this, so that we maximise the chance of getting it absolutely
right. Because we're talking January 2029.
Future proofed, and that's the difficult thing, because obviously there's stuff that we don't know, and you have to just make a best guess on.
I sit on audit and governance, and I see this as a risk factor that we should be including in our list of risk factors and the possible mitigations of it. You've said that there are reasonable mitigations going forward to the risks that are coming along, but I think that I'll take that back to audit and governance and say, I think so. We should have this, and the auditors to say that this should be a risk factor.
Yeah, and talking about the facility in Worcester, they need us. They always start the turbines up with certain heat, certain electricity that to start them up, but they need a flow of waste consistently throughout the 24 hours to keep them going, and that's the problem. If you don't get enough fuel, then they can't keep the turbines going, and therefore it becomes inefficient to run it. So there is a balance here between the feedstock, and as you say, not encouraging people simply to create waste in order to feed it. But that's always the balance you've got.
It might not be our feedstock.
Right.
But that's the point. I mean, for instance, I think it's Hampshire that they have to export their residual to Sweden.
Yes.
Where there's an energy for waste plant in Sweden.
They make an offer.
So yes, because we need it right now, but we'll come to a point where we would probably be looking to
last point on this one.
To understand, so you would expect to see these energy from waste units disappearing as our across the country as recycling rates are
But I
improving.
think the point I'm trying to make is there isn't a sufficiency in the country currently.
Okay.
So, you know, it may be that then we would have a conversation with the council that's exporting to Sweden to say, you don't have to do that. You could just send it to us.
Herefordshire, and they'll say, where's Herefordshire? We know where Sweden is, but.
Oh, it's Worcestershire.
I know it's Worcestershire, that's right, yes.
It's a bit more central, Councillor Highfield, so they can't get there. It's on a good road network as well, so.
I think, but to take up on your point about, you know, this needs, you know, we're kind of at the point now in this process where we probably need to start.
We need to give some serious consideration
I
to
think
it.
that's a good point,
And we're going to have a recommendation that you do pick that up. Can we go on to the garden waste service? It's a very simple question, this. We've got almost 3,000. I'm delighted by the amount of what you're doing to promote it. I mean, I think the paper.
Have you seen the
solid in that.
promotions?
Man,
I've subscribed. Promotions. Well done, great. Has you been around?
I've got my bin, thank you. I'm waiting for, you know, notification about when I start putting it out.
Yeah.
I take mine to the local recycling centre.
Yeah, me too.
I even carry some of it sometimes, a mile and a half, to give me some exercise. Are you, I mean, I know this is a crystal ball gaze, and I don't know what sort of numbers you were expecting before the service started, but within 6 years, we've got to get about 16,000. And we have got the private operators who operate around our area as well. Are you confident we will break even within the 6 years still?
So it was very, very difficult to predict this going through the procurement process because there were not many local authorities who had introduced a chargeable service like this from scratch in the last 10 years or so. Because either they already had a chargeable service in place with bins, or they had a free service in place and they were moving from a free service to a chargeable service. So bins were already out there, people more inclined to sign up straight away because they've already got their bin, they've already been using it, they already like it. The figures that we looked at for those that had brought it on new were anything between 4% and a 15% uptake within the first year of service. And for those local authorities who were classed as rural, who'd sort of had a service in place for a number of years, the average uptake for those was 44%. So it does take us well into those numbers. Bear in mind, we only launched this in October and we've had winter. The last weekend, since I wrote this report, we had 3,200. We've now got 3,700. So we've had quite a number over the last week with the summer. The summer, spring is coming with the, you know, with the sun coming out, people just starting to do that little bit to get into their gardens. A bit tricky in that, yes, we do have that biffa service out there, and we didn't know, and we did have some conversations with them around whether or not they would continue. It looks like they are going to continue currently, but we don't know at what point, because their subscriptions are a rolling subscription. They don't all just start at one point in the year. We don't know at what point people might drop off of their service and then come on to ours. And we might even see a bit of a delayed reaction in that if people are subscribed to them into sort of the middle of summer, and they might think, oh, it's not worth me now paying Heritage Council because I'm not going to get full use of the service. So we are looking to drop the price. So anyone that subscribes from October, we're going to drop it to £30. So they still get a part service if they sign up with us in October, just to try to keep that flow of people coming on and not say it's £60 no matter what time of the year you sign up with us. So we're really trying to push it. I think the next 4 to 6 weeks is going to be that real identifier of how many people do come onto the service. And I think once that period of time has gone past, we'll be in a much better position to be able to say, where are we at? The other thing that we've done is, because we're not going to need the full suite of resources that was written into the contract, because we don't have 16,000 sign-ups, we've gone back to our collection contractor to say, what can we do to reduce the need for these resources at this point in time, so that we're not paying a full amount of money and we haven't got the need to send those vehicles out. We do have a bit of a difficulty in that obviously we have to go county-wide. So it's not necessarily the number of people you can reach, it's the amount of time you've got to reach all of those people. So they have come back to us with literally the past couple of weeks with some figures, and I've gone back to them just to question and query a few of those figures they've come back to us with. So going into year one, we won't be paying the full cost of the service because we haven't got that number of subscribers. So we have tried to reduce that impact. At the moment, there is money allocated from the reserve, which is there to remove that risk of us not having that full subscription at the beginning. But I've gone back to the contractor to try to reduce our costs so that we don't have to use that full reserve in year one, and it can be spaced out over time if we don't quite reach the numbers that we need to. So again, there's a little bit of uncertainties with Biffa, what will happen with their customers. Yeah.
Well, I have a contract with Biffa, and the Herefordshire contract is cheaper. But and obviously it will be of real benefit to us if Biffa don't run their service anymore. But if anyone's like me, they've kept their Biffa contract until the Herefordshire Council one starts. So it could be that all those Biffa contracts or many of them get dropped as soon as you start your collection, and then they might withdraw the service, which I guess would have a huge impact.
Yeah.
And we are undercutting them.
As a cabinet member, Councillor Swinglehurst, are you happy with the way that the numbers have gone?
Yeah.
That's all we need. That's the reassurance we need to know.
We de-risked it as much as possible.
Right.
We've looked at comparable authorities. We've looked at, we've made intelligent guesses as to where we think it's going to go. Nothing's ever 100%, but I think this is as good as we can get with it.
Right. Food waste. And it was interesting. I was listening to Politics Midland on Sunday. Well, I just came across it as you do when you're browsing, and they were talking about waste and food waste. And the government seems to have recognised that authorities are not in a position to have met their requirement, as they had, to have a food waste service by April this year. In fact, they seem to be taking a more flexible line about how or when or if authorities bring in a food waste collection. My first point, Councillor Swinglehurst, are we still committed to having a food waste collection service in the future?
Yeah. It's in the Environment Act 2021, and we want to do it, but the government, the way in which the timing has worked out, it's just unrealistic.
And the government's recognised that.
This should come forward with new burdens funding. So that's the assumption that the cabinet decision is made on that assumption. And then the new burdens funding is not present, and then we're told, well, it's just in the settlement, that settlement where we've got rather less money than we entirely.
Unfair funding.
Yes. So given that it's another 2.6 million pounds of service that we're trying to provide with the settlement that's got less money than we were hoping for, not having new burdens as a specific pot, it gives us quite a quandary, because we have to find that money now post-budget. We have to amend the governance because the cabinet decision was taken on the understanding that it would be a new burdens. So all of these things really kind of track back to the way the government has made this process. So it's impossible. You can't just suddenly do it from a standing start
and it's recognised across the country. But
I just put in a practical consideration on this. One of the reasons we don't want to leave black bins more than a maximum of 2 weeks is because of the food waste in them, and it starts to stink and get the flies. If we had a separate collection of the food waste, we could consider having maybe a 3-weekly cycle with the other bins instead.
There's lots of good reasons to do it. That's definitely one of them. I mean, I don't know whether we're ever going to do that, but it definitely makes that far more likely, and it would make people feel less concerned about that. But obviously the other thing is we waste 8 billion tonnes of food a year, and I think separating that stream makes people realise what they're putting in it, hopefully. And that may then also, be a way to change behaviour.
Yeah, and the committee is minded to have a recommendation to ask the executive to come forward with a timetable for the introduction of food waste service. I think you'd be happy with that, would you? I mean, we don't have the idea of when that might be, but at least if that recommendation is there, it might at least trigger some thinking within the council as to when you could deliver it.
Progressed as we could be, but there are third-party considerations on this, but we could certainly come up with what.
Okay. I think we'll stay with that recommendation. Councillor Pepperly?
I mean, it's great to see how support for repair cafes have had a bit of an impact on things. So in terms of food waste, we have some really good zero waste stores like the Living Room, which take food from supermarkets directly. But there are schemes whereby people can recycle or put into a community larder the waste from their own fridges, but there's nothing like that happens in Herefordshire, and whether those are schemes that we could develop, like a community fridge in more rural situations where people actually take things out of their fridge and put them in the fridge, in a community fridge, and share, instead of, the waste which comes from supermarkets direct into an outlet like
It's difficult. I suppose it's difficult really because of when it comes to supermarkets. I mean, so in Monmouth there's a community larder thing, but it is the food out of supermarkets. So it's not a food bank. It's anyone can go there, and it's brilliant. But they know that they have stuff coming through all the time. Whereas if you were just whether or not your next door one neighbour's going to put a loaf of bread out, it would be quite difficult again, particularly in a rural situation, because it would be very hard to control. I don't really know.
No,
I say no. I'm just trying to envisage how it would work.
Yeah. Well, I know there are schemes that do it, kind of more rural ones, because they've still got the place in Ross, haven't they? And that's on a much bigger scale.
Community Gardens has got a food waste store, yes.
But the places like community hubs in more rural places literally just have a fridge, and you can put stuff in there and you can take stuff.
There might be something for Talk Community and the community hubs to take up as a separate thing, because I think to sort of do it as a whole new thing like a repair cafe would be very hard. But if you can do it within an existing framework where there's already people and there's already a space, then all you're really saying to them is, it's like a fridge.
Yeah.
A
space.
That'd be quite doable.
So what's the action?
It's just from the waste.
I don't know.
How do we take this?
I don't know whether it's deliverable or I just know that it's in the scheme.
So probably through the Talk Community.
Who's going to do it?
I'll put it as a recommendation, then we can.
Do you want to have a recommendation?
I'll work with them.
Yeah.
Recommend to look at it.
Put it in teams.
If you could, thanks. Put it in teams. Councillor Highfield.
So really all you're saying is here's the thought, you write to them and say, here's something that you might want to consider. So they do it, we do. But we could potentially provide them with fridges. If we've got fridges, for instance, coming through the bulky waste collection that are usable.
Yeah, Herefordshire Recycling Centre's always got electrical equipment.
Yeah.
Quite often they're there because they're broken.
Send them to the repair cafe.
In Hong Kong, where I lived most of my life, they have the repair cafe thing. They have recycling centres, but what they also do is they have recycling fairs where they have a public space where stalls are put up, and people who want to, collect toasters and kettles and what have you, you can go there and you hand the stuff in, and they were very popular. You think, well, why don't they go to a recycling centre? Well, because sometimes it's awkward and it's a bit formal and you've got to drive to somewhere else. They could just go to a local park where they've got a load of stalls and hand in the stuff they think might be useful for recycling. And the repair cafes set up a stall there, and other people who think, yeah, it's my hobby to fix radios, so I'll put a stall up saying radios welcome or something,
We'll stay with that because we do collect small electrical items. We put them out.
And batteries.
We put them out. Some of them have been working. What happens to them?
They go for recycling.
Recycling.
Yeah.
To be reused.
With the components of it.
Components, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just the components, yes. Similar to the,
That's something, that whole debate around reuse and recycling is something that, I'm not a broken record player. In fact, I'm not broken, I'm a really well-working record player, but I just got stuck in a particular scratch on the record about that. And I think that's sort of something where, you know, we always need to bear in mind that it's reduce, reuse, recycle. It's not recycle, recycle, recycle. So, if you're looking at an electrical thing that could be reused versus recycle, that's better. And whether or not we've got exactly the right processes in place to maximise the reduce, reuse bit before we get to the recycle bit.
how would you do that, councillor?
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? Because we're all kind of set up in a particular way now with the household recycling centres that the emphasis is on recycling. So it's, but you can't then go in and go to the electrical skip and go, hey, that looks good, I'm going to take that off. Because you can't. It's not allowed. And all the stuff in that skip is going to go for recycling and not for reuse, although some of it could be reused, but you're never going to know.
So what's the executive's thoughts on that in terms of trying to change?
My thought is as this contract comes up and we start to, you know, really get into the nitty gritty with it, and particularly, you know, if it's going to be broken up and we get more flex, I would definitely like to see us with a lot more emphasis on the reusing bit.
Then why don't you?
In as many ways as possible, because I you know, that's how I live my life. I hate throwing things away. God, you know, and I'll fix things and keep going because why? Because that's how I was brought up, because it's good. And so it gives me sort of vapours when I go to the recycling centre and I see all the stuff sitting in the
I'm going to bring Councillor Thompson. So part of the waste disposal contract discussions could be, how can we lever it to make reuse more important?
Use more flex to get more stuff
Yes.
out of the skips or divert it from skips and either, you know, and maybe there's a synergy between that and the repair cafes. I mean, my local repair cafe is amazing, wonderful chaps all there fiddling about with stuff. That's brilliant.
And the added benefit of the community and
cup of tea and a slice of cake.
Yeah, exactly.
What's not to love?
Well, I don't want to lose this point, Councillor Thomas.
Yeah, do we not at our recycling centres have an area where people can go and help themselves?
It's simple.
There's Warwick should do, Gloucester should do, so why on earth don't we?
We have dedicated areas where charities or organisations that have permission can come and take stuff off the site. So it would be maybe the hospice or the reuse, Hereford Reuse Community Group, that lot. The Friends of Ukraine, Ukraine. So it's more, it's not just like this one stuff itself. It's the charities that can.
Yeah,
because. But then they find they got more stuff than they know what to do with.
Don't think it's a contract.
A recycling centre like the one in Ross, for example, is that not run by the council? Is that run by a company?
Contractor, yeah.
A contractor, okay, so we haven't got that sort of contract, that's what I'm saying.
No, but that's the contract that's coming up for.
Yeah, so, okay, because I say, I know that my sister and I worked here, they're constantly diving in and they set aside and she buys an awful lot of stuff, recycles it herself and then sells it at car food sales. It makes a living out of it.
The economy going on though.
Yeah, and she's not alone.
Yeah, great.
Like those magpies.
Yeah, I'm all for that.
The final point, since we've got your agree of recommendations and time is running on, the separating out of more of the recycling items that we collect.
Increasing reuse.
Have we lost sight of that? Are we still going to do something along those lines?
Oh, you mean paper and card?
Paper and card, glass and plastic.
I don't know really. I mean, I think my guess is if you look at the table of what we are doing, it's a bandwidth thing. There's just what we can achieve realistically.
Yeah, I saw the recycling reaction to our last recommendation.
And the other thing is that, and it is difficult. I don't know what the answer is here. It is public acceptance. I don't think we are in a place yet where public acceptance for multiple bins is on. You know, and if the public, if you don't take the public with you, you're doomed to fail. So it's a judgment call as to where we are at that point. So that's why it's important that the food waste comes in, because Councillor Highfield points at exactly the right point. It builds that acceptance for another step and another step and another step, and then bit by bit we'll get the everything done.
I mean, the deposit scheme is for plastic, isn't it?
It's for,
It used to be for glass as well in the past.
so no, they've set it up so that it'll be for plastic bottles and drinks cans. So essentially, it's to try to prevent the items that somebody would chuck out the window, drop on the floor. It's on the go.
Motorway.
It's on the go.
Right, down
Drinks
the airport.
containers, basically.
All right, okay.
Up to 3 litres, I think. They've excluded glass, so it's only plastic bottles and cans. What was the other thing they were going to include?
When I was a kid, it was all glass bottles and you got threepence back for
But
bringing the bottle back. Why didn't we stick with that?
Because the weight of transporting all of those
I
items
suppose.
Yeah.
uses more emissions. So, you know, plastic's a wonderful product, but we've got hundreds of different types of them. So the plastics intent tax that they've brought in, as well as the EPR, hopeful that it will start to narrow down that field of plastic. So we've got the within your questions was the plastic films as well. So come April next year, we also have to start collecting what we call flexible plastics. So your bread bags, your soft squishy plastics, and so we're in discussions with the contractor now is how can we do that? How can they be separated out from the other recycling? Because if we put another fleet of vehicles in, it's going to cost the same as the food waste collection service. You know, we can't do that. So we're talking to the disposal contractor around how can we make this happen next year? And the likelihood it will be that it will be sort of an indestructible plastic bag that you put all your plastics into, because they have run some trials across the country, and it seems to be the easiest, cheapest, and most successful way of getting people to actually separate out their plastics. So that's another thing that we need to come in, but the market for all those different types of plastics is not developed in this country, and we've got a chicken and egg situation. Until we start collecting it, there's no markets for it. If we start collecting it, we're then going to end up not being able to do anything with it. We just don't know. And because there are so many different types of plastics within that, trying to separate them all out to be able to do something with them, I think has proved a bit tricky.
You need to talk to the supermarkets because we take ours to Aldi's.
Yeah.
We don't take it to Sainsbury's because they've got more restrictive conditions that you've got to take all the yellow stickers off and this and that. So we take all our flexible plastics and
That's all it has done.
crisp bags, sweets, raffles, we take it all to Aldi's and put it in there every 2 or 3 days. So you maybe talk to supermarkets and see why they've got that service there and what they're doing with it.
Well, they'll have a requirement within the legislation to take back.
Yeah, but you might find out what they're doing with it afterwards.
But I'm wondering if that requirement has changed because of EPR, and that's why Asda aren't doing it anymore. I mean, this was big Asda Belmont. No.
Can you tell
I'm now
that
driving around
to explore that? Because all the supermarkets, Tesco's, they're all got these bins now
Yeah.
where you can put all your flexible plastics in.
Yeah, Morrison's do.
Yeah.
I'm fully in support because I've sailed through the plastic continent in the Pacific.
Have you?
Right through it, and it goes for hundreds of miles of just solid plastic continent on the surface of the sea. And so anything we can do to stop all
To
that.
stop that would be good.
Right.
Can see it from space, can't you, I think?
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably see the A40 from space.
Well,
Down there.
well, thanks very much for that debate. We're now going to have another break, Simon, while we discuss our recommendations. And if you want to go, then fine. If you want to, Councillor Swingers, wait to see what our recommendations are, you can. It's up to you. If you want to go, you can go.
See you on my next meeting.
Sorry. One question.
for them on block?
Yeah.
Enthusiasm is amazing. And the second, are we happy with those as recommendations? Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the team. Thank you very much, Councillor Flinders.
Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you.
Very interesting. We now have 5 minutes, so I'm going to go on to the work programme item.
I thought we did this that week.
No, I'm just going to mention exactly what's happened. On the work programme item, can I ask members to look at the objectives under land use management for the next June meeting, because we have changed them. We've changed them to make them more specific to what the council can deliver under land use management. Following a very useful meeting, you were there. You were there at the meetings with the officers on land use management. So we have changed them. Can you have a look at them? I'm not asking you to necessarily have a debate today, but Simon, can we get a date in the calendar for an informal work programme meeting where we can discuss that and the rest of the work programme running up to the elections in 2027? I have raised the question of the carbon management plan as an item for our work programme. I don't think we can avoid it because that's a major part of the way that we achieve net zero by 2030. I think we will have to look at that this year. So we may have to change the work programme around. I'm conscious, Councillor Mason, about flooding and drainage, and we need to consider what we're going to do about that. That is something else that we need to look at where that comes into our work programme. So I would urge all members, if they can, to let Simon know when we are looking at dates for the informal work programme, whether you can make them or not, because I do think it's quite an important aspect of our work. If the work programme doesn't hang together, then obviously the committee doesn't work effectively. So we will get something, Simon, in the diary.
Yes.
Between now and June the 16th, of course. I mean, preferably well in advance of June the 16th, because we'll have to have our KLOE on that as well.
Yeah.
Finally, moving to the last item, the date of the next meeting will be June the 16th.
Oh.
2026.
Which May? June, did you say?
June the 16th, I said, on 2026.
Questioning which year?
That's what you said, I thought.
I just heard the 16th.
27, we'll have all lost our seats, so we'll have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Some of us are really having had that prospect in mind. And
June the 16th.
I put it in 17th.
I put it in on.
is it 17th?
Yeah,
I thought you said the 16th, Simon.
I'll just double
I've
check.
got it as 17.
Yeah, Simon said the 16th.
Good. I've got my books.
I should have checked my brief.
Long meeting, we'll have 2 meetings.
So I'll just see what's actually in the public sort of one there.
Going to make a quick comment about garden waste.
Wednesday.
When I could finally get to mow my lawn.
Yeah,
I haven't
Wednesday,
done it to the October. It's been so-
Yes, it is the 17th of June, Wednesday, 17th of June.
Oh my God, for that.
There's going to be a lot of garden waste, but actually there's going to be so much, it's going to be hay. We don't need to take it to it's going to make hay.
At 12:50, I'm going to bring this meeting to a close. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day. I've got a car to fix now.
Oh, yeah.
Nightmare. God knows how much that's
I
going to
told
cost.
you.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Daniel.
Can I